Chapter 57. When passion melts even the oldest ice. He was determined to win her heart, so sure of himself that he believed once she was filled with tenderness, she would be unable to deny him anything. He smiled, imagining the scene. He would turn Arielleth's stubborn devotion to truth to his advantage. He slipped off his tunic and bent to stir the fire. Arielleth washed quickly, afraid Draven might turn and catch her in something so intimate. But the irony of the moment struck her, and she ended up laughing. Draven approached the tub, hands on his hips, intrigued by that laughter. He was no longer wearing a shirt, and Arielleth's pulse raced beyond control. It was enough for him to breathe, to unsettle her. She held her breath, embarrassed by how obvious her reaction was. "I sleep beside you every night without a stitch of clothing," she murmured, shrugging. "I shouldn't be scandalized by this. That's why I was laughing." She straightened before him, as if she wished to prove to them both that she was no longer trembling. The water gleamed on her skin, her damp hair fell over her shoulders. There was a mischievous spark in her gaze. Draven kissed her forehead, and then the tip of her nose. He couldn't help it. She was luminous, and her struggle to maintain her dignity touched him. When Arielleth shivered, he took the cloth Morwenna had left on the chair, and wrapped it around her shoulders before lifting her and carrying her to the fire. She remained standing, her back to the flames. She closed her eyes as she felt Draven's chest brush her body softly. The heat of the hearth warmed her skin, his warmth her heart. For the first time she felt loved. Truly loved. And that certainty disarmed her. She did not object when Draven began to dry her with reverent slowness. When he finished, he pulled on the ends of the cloth, drew her against him, and kissed her with a passion that left her breathless. Arielleth responded with equal surrender. She cradled his face in her hands, stroked his back, sought him without reserve, until he pulled away with gentle abruptness as if afraid of losing control. "Take me to bed, Draven," she pleaded. He did not yield completely. He brushed her chin with a slow kiss, descending in adoration along her neck and her chest. "You are wondrously beautiful," he whispered. He worshipped her with his hands, with his mouth, with a fervor so intense her knees weakened. Draven held her, guided her, wrapped her in caresses that were more than desire, a declaration. He brought her to the edge of madness, and when she arched toward him, Draven held her tightly, as if in that gesture he gathered everything he did not know how to say. Arielleth lost all sense of time, only the warmth of his hands and the deep voice murmuring words of love existed. When at last she let her forehead fall against Draven's chest, exhausted and trembling, he embraced her with a tenderness that undid her. He led her to the bed. He lay with her in his arms, still breathing hard. Arielleth caressed him, fascinated by the warmth of his skin, by his scent, by the powerful calm he radiated. He surrounded her, enclosing her completely between his body and the mattress. A rebellious lock fell over his brow. Arielleth was about to brush it aside, when Draven spoke. "I love you, Arielleth." She went still, eyes wide open. And he understood too late what he had just said. It was not as he had imagined. In his mind, she should have answered with the same certainty, but Arielleth began to cry. "Are you crying because I told you I love you?" Draven asked, bewildered. "No," she whispered. "Then why? Have I upset you?" "No, but I'm very worried. You should not love someone like me." Draven sighed, restraining himself. He tucked her under the blankets, waiting. She curled against his chest, silent. "What are you afraid of?" he asked at last. "Is it so terrible to know that I love you?" She cried again. "There is no hope for us, Draven. The king will bless our union," he interrupted, confident. "He will have no other choice." Arielleth looked at him, confused. "Explain it to me. I don't want to keep trembling." "I have known Guillermo since youth," Draven said. "He has many flaws, but he is a just leader. Your uncle merely repeated the clergy's opinion. They hate him because he does not kneel before them. Besides, he knows how much I am worth to him. Trust me. He will not betray me."
But Morhollow, she whispered.
Draven narrowed his eyes.
What has that Arielleth told you? That my brother has a particular relationship with the king.
He swallowed a weary sigh. He knew what she meant, and he did not wish to discuss it with her. Whatever it is, it does not matter. The king will not betray any of his barons. And in this battle, Arielleth, honor is on my side. The same honor that left you tied to a post in the fortress of Morhollow? She asked in a trembling voice.
You could have died.
I saved you. Honor had nothing to do with it. Draven held her gaze. And though neither yielded, she felt for the first time that they were arguing like those who have already bound their destinies together. Draven did not answer. He knew Arielleth was mistaken, but he saw no need to tell her. Morhollow will use me to hurt you, she murmured. My love, there is not a baron in all of England who is unaware of what he did to a scyther. If the king were to turn his back on the truth, it would be the first mistake he has made since taking the crown. A sovereign is owed loyalty, yes, but first one must be loyal to oneself. Otherwise, fidelity means nothing. Believe me, Arielleth, Morhollow cannot win this war. Trust me, I know what must be done. She remained silent for a long while before turning toward him. I trust you, she whispered.
From the first night in that tent.
You promised you would not touch me, and I believed you. Draven smiled at the memory. Do you see now how absurd it was to fear that I might take advantage of you without your consent? Arielleth nodded, exhausted. Draven, sleep is overtaking me. No, wife, he said, with a blend of tenderness and stubbornness. You will not evade this matter. I have confessed my love. Have you nothing to say to me? Thank you, my husband. Thank you. He roared, finally losing his temper. In an instant he had her lying on her back, his strong body leaning over hers. Draven's jaw was taut as a warblade, yet Arielleth felt no fear. She slid her hands over his shoulders, along his arms, with a slow caress that disarmed him. Beneath her touch he remained rigid, but his eyes betrayed him. A vulnerable, almost reverent unease shone in them. She gave him a gentle smile, and something in Draven yielded. His frown eased as his body relaxed over hers. Are you mocking me? He asked, with a thread of irony. I am not mocking you, she whispered. You have given me the greatest of gifts. I feel overwhelmed. He waited. You are the only man who has ever said he loves me. A crease of disbelief furrowed her brow as she went on. How could I not love you as well? She seemed to discover it in that very moment, and Draven's sigh nearly tangled in her hair. I suppose I should count myself fortunate that Garin did not get ahead of you, he joked. He did. Arielleth's restrained laughter lit her eyes. But it was not true love. Only a small, youthful adoration. She lifted herself to kiss him and pressed close. I have loved you for a long time, Draven. I was simply too foolish to see it. I understood it tonight, at the table with your family. I know I hold a place in your life, and in your heart. You have always held it, he replied gravely. Tears gleamed in Arielleth's eyes. Your love for me is a miracle. You abducted me to take revenge on my brother, did you not?
Yes, Draven admitted.
And is that why you married me? Did you already love me then?
I thought it was desire.
He smiled shamelessly. I only wanted to take you to my bed. Revenge and desire, she retorted, lifting a brow.
Not very honorable, my lord.
You have forgotten compassion, he said. Compassion? You fell in love because you pitied me. You have just listed my own arguments, wife. She snorted at his laughter. If your love rests on revenge, desire, and compassion. Arielleth, he interrupted gently.
What did I tell you before leaving your brother's fortress?
An eye for an eye, she recalled. And you told me I belonged to you. I spoke the truth. He kissed her to silence her suspicious look. Even so, I do not fully understand it, she admitted. Neither do I, Draven confessed. I did not think of marriage at first. But it was your act of mercy that sealed our fate. The act of? When you warmed my feet that night. His eyes softened. I knew then, though I refused to admit it, that there would be no other path for us. Arielleth smiled, remembering. You called me naive. Never. Draven feigned indignation. It would be another who dared such an affront. I shall seek him out and punish him. She laughed, radiant. It was you, Baron. And I forgave you long ago. Your obsession with truth will get you into trouble, he said, kissing her again. But I will be there to protect you. And I will protect you, she replied proudly. It is my duty as a wife. Draven arched a brow at her boldness. Arielleth burst out laughing. You no longer frighten me. Not now that I know you love me. He shook his head slowly. I know. I like it when you say it, she whispered. Say it again. Such arrogant orders you give me. Draven murmured, leaning toward her mouth. I love you, Draven, with all that I am, she replied, brushing his lip. I would give my life for you. I will love you always. Draven's satisfied growl was the only answer, before he drew her back to him once more. Chapter 58. The winter moon claimed them as one. Draven. Yes, my love. When did you know you loved me? Sleep, Arielleth. Dawn is not far off. But she did not want to close her eyes. She wanted to cling to that night as if it were a dream that must not fade. She nestled against him with transparent intent, brushing his legs with her bare feet. Tell me, she whispered. Please. When was it? Draven let out a resigned sigh. He knew he would find no peace until he gave her an answer. Today. Ah, she exclaimed, pushing herself up a little. Ah, what? He asked, amused. Now everything begins to make sense, she said. You are the one who never speaks plainly, Draven growled. You behaved strangely all day. You even managed to unsettle me. But when exactly? When exactly what? When did you understand that you love me? Arielleth would not let her prey escape. When I thought my horse might hurt you. Silas. You thought Silas was going to hurt me? Her astonishment drew a weary smile from him. She had no idea of the fear he had felt. Draven, she murmured, and that sweet silken tone she used when she wanted something from him almost made him shiver. You ruined my stallion, he reminded her. I tried to tell you before you fell asleep on my knees. I didn't ruin him, she protested. I only showed him a little benevolence. Affection cannot harm anyone. It can be lethal if you do not let me sleep for a moment, he replied, stifling a yawn. You have become a tireless creature. You have left me breathless. Thank you, she said, triumphant. You may keep Silas. Silas. For me, she asked, overflowing like a child before a gift. The beast has surrendered to you. You have turned him into a lamb. I shall regret it all my life. You will regret it. Draven ignored the question, and turned her toward him so he could look at her face. Listen carefully, you will not ride him until I teach you. Understood? And why do you think I do not know how to ride? She had concealed it as best she could, but Draven saw too much. Promise it, he ordered. I promise, she murmured, biting her lip. Then, as if a sudden fear broke through, you will not change your mind tomorrow, will you? Of course not. Silas is yours. I was not speaking of Silas. Draven frowned, waiting. You will not change your mind about loving me. Will you? Never, he replied firmly. He sealed his promise with a kiss and let himself fall back, overcome by weariness. You did not go to swim in the lake tonight, she murmured. That truly is strange. He did not answer at once. It was unbearably cold, he managed at last. Arielleth smiled to herself. How deeply she loved him. Draven, she whispered with a shy flush. Did you like making love with me before the fire? When you kissed me there?
Yes, Arielleth, he answered, his voice turning deep.
You are sweet as honey. The memory made her blush, and in him it lit a dangerous spark. She turned toward him, and without opening her eyes began to caress him slowly, tracing a path that descended from his chin to his belly. Do you think I would like to taste you as well? She asked, with a blend of modesty and daring. Before Draven could reply, Arielleth had already bent to kiss his skin, provoking an involuntary tremor. Her fingers traced a path lower still, guided by curiosity and desire. He held his breath when her hand found him, warm and sure. You are burning, Draven, she whispered, low and reverent. Give me a little of your fire. And Draven forgot his weariness, the dawn and the whole world. He gave himself to her like an ancient spell, blessing again and again the miracle that his wife loved him. After that, he could think of nothing at all. Chapter 59. The wolf of the north always recognizes his equal. Winter had descended upon the lands like a silent army, winds howling through the pastures, icy claws gripping the countryside in a prison of frost. Day after day the cold seemed determined to hold the entire world in its unmoving fist. It seemed endless. And then she arrived, spring, a gentle lady with warm hands. She carried with her the ancient promise of renewal. Beneath her caress the wind lost its edge and became a breeze, a faint breath moving across the land like a whisper of hope. The trees were the first to bow before the new season. Their branches, once brittle, now danced with grace and clothed themselves in tender buds. Seeds that had slept since autumn awoke in an explosion of color and fragrance, summoning the happy hum of bees. For Arielleth, it was a magical season. She loved Draven with renewed wonder, and still found it hard to believe that he loved her in return. During the first weeks after his declaration, she lived with a knot of fear, the worry that one day he might grow tired of her. She did everything she could to please him, until the first quarrel came. Nothing serious, barely a spark that could have been snuffed out with a sigh. Instead it flared. He was irritable, she exhausted. Arielleth could no longer even remember the cause. Only that Draven had raised his voice, and that she had answered with the cold mask she had worn all her life. The mask did not last. Her husband disarmed her in an instant, and she, pride defeated, burst into tears. She shouted that it was obvious he no longer loved her, and fled to the tower. Draven followed her, thundering like a storm. The reason for the argument shifted at once. They were no longer fighting over the original cause, but over her tendency to imagine the worst. When Arielleth realized that he was furious precisely because he believed she felt unloved, she stopped fearing his severe expression. After all, he was shouting that he loved her. That night she learned something valuable. Sometimes to answer a shout one had to shout back. Since living with the Wulfsens, her old rules were crumbling. The freedom that filled that place allowed her to feel. If she wanted to laugh, she laughed. And if she wanted to shout, she did, even while trying to preserve a trace of elegance. She also discovered that she was beginning to resemble Draven. Routine gave her security, and any change unsettled her. When Emric and Garin departed to fulfill their 40 days of duty to their lord, Arielleth voiced her displeasure to anyone within reach. Draven reminded her, with no small measure of irony, that she herself had once accused him of not trusting his brothers enough. But Arielleth was beyond reason. She had turned into a sort of protective hen, determined to keep the Wulfsens under her wings. Draven understood her better than she understood herself. A Scyther and her brothers had become the family Arielleth had never had. After so many years of solitude, that warm multitude of voices and presences was a balm she could not let go. She had even taken on the role of peacemaker. She sprang like a coiled spring whenever someone needed protection, yet was surprised each time the others wanted to protect her. She did not yet understand her own worth. Draven did. He knew that to her it was a miracle that he loved her. He was not a man given to proclaiming his feelings, but he soon understood that Arielleth needed to hear them, again and again. Her past had sown deep fears. Patience, he thought, would be his best weapon. The days with her would have been idyllic, had a Scyther not decided to lose everyone's good sense. Draven tried to be indulgent with his sister, but her behavior tempted him to lose his temper. He made the mistake of saying as much to Arielleth. When he admitted that at times he wished to gag a Scyther, his wife was scandalized and ran to defend her. She called him insensitive. He knew he was not. He felt compassion for Overgaard, the Baron who courted a Scyther with the patience of a saint. A Scyther shouted, cried, ridiculed him, nothing was enough to drive him away. Draven concluded that Overgaard was stubborn as a mule, or obstinate as a bull. Perhaps both. And yet, he admired him. Perseverance, rightly directed, was an act of courage. Draven would have preferred to remain on the sidelines, but Arielleth refused to allow it. She dragged him into every family dispute, convincing him that it was his duty to impose order. She reminded him, with logic impossible to refute, that he could be Baron and brother at the same time, and that the distant self-control he had inherited from his father should not govern his life. Since their wedding, Draven had not won a single argument. And yet in this one he had to admit that she was right, though he would never tell her so. He began to dine with the family to make her happy, and to his surprise, he ended up enjoying it. At those long meals 1,000 matters were debated, and he soon learned to appreciate the sharpness of Emmerich and Garin. Little by little, the walls he had raised within himself crumbled. He understood that his father had been wrong to rule with an iron fist. Respect is not won through fear but through affection. And it was Arielleth who taught him that simple, powerful truth. She had brought him home again. Draven still kept his routine with his men, but each afternoon he devoted an hour to teaching Arielleth to ride. She learned quickly. It was not long before she could ride Silas to the hill beyond the walls. He accompanied her, watchful, feigning ill humor when she insisted on bringing food for the imaginary wolf. Arielleth asked why one side of the hill was bare, and the other a wild forest. Draven explained that the trees on the side facing the fortress had been cut down, to give the sentinels a clear view. In case of attack, the archers would have open ground. She listened, astonished. It seemed that everything he did was in service of protection. Draven shook his head, it was nothing more than a lord's duty. She smiled then, one of those gestures he awaited as one awaits the sunrise. Arielleth feared speaking of the future. She did not want her brother's name to return to her life. Neither of them mentioned it. And since Draven could not convince her that all would be well, avoiding the subject was the only option. Spring was also a time of clarity for him. He had to be absent for nearly a month, by order of the king. When he returned, Arielleth wept with joy. They spent the night awake, loving each other with a fervor that seemed to erase the absence. They would have spent the entire day in bed, if duty had not called them. She hated being separated from him. He, though he did not confess it, lived each day away from her, counting the hours until his return. Spring withdrew, leaving behind a path of light and flowers. Then summer arrived, warm and vast, kissing the lands of the Wulfsens. The roads grew kind, and Draven knew he would soon be summoned by his king. He kept his worries to himself so as not to trouble Arielleth, and began to prepare his men. Chapter 60. The King's Brother. Baron Overgaard returned to the Wulfsen's fortress in the last days of June, determined to try, once again, to win Ositha's heart. Draven received him in the courtyard, and both men carried news that allowed no delay. Draven had just received a messenger, bearing a letter sealed with the royal emblem. He knew how to read, though Arielleth was unaware of that skill, and the contents of the missive had unsettled him more than he wished to admit. He was too agitated to offer his friend a courteous welcome. Overgaard, for his part, looked just as tense. After a brief greeting, he handed his horse's reins to Tomrich and turned to Draven. "I come from the Thorngar fortress," he announced in a low voice. Draven gestured, summoning Faramond. "We have much to discuss." "And I would rather Faramond hear it as well." Overgaard nodded and went on. I told you that at Thorngar I met Enrique, the king's brother. He wanted to know far too much about you. The three men moved inside, beneath the sun slanting against the walls. I believe he wished to gauge your position, in case he were ever to place the crown upon his head, Overgaard added. Draven frowned.
What sort of questions?
The conversation unfolded in a strange atmosphere, as though they knew something I did not. I cannot explain it better. Do you fear they intend to harm King Guillermo? Draven asked. No, Overgaard replied flatly. But I did find it curious that you had not been invited when everything revolved around you. Did he question my loyalty? No one doubts it. But you command one of the finest armies in the realm. If you wished, you could challenge the king himself. Draven halted, stunned. Does Enrique suggest that I might rebel? I do not think so. He respects you. But I also sensed in him a restlessness I could not decipher. They climbed the steps toward the great hall. There Arielleth was arranging carnations in a vase, while three children devoured a cake beside her. She lifted her head when she heard them enter. Her smile, gentle as a truce, lit the room. Supper will be ready in an hour, she announced with a graceful greeting. Overgaard, it is a pleasure to see you again. Is it not, Pharamond? A scyther will be delighted. The men burst into laughter, and Arielleth raised her brows in mock severity before turning to the children. Out you go, little ones. Finish your snack outdoors. And you, little Guillermo, find a scyther and tell her we have company. Do you think you can manage that? The boy nodded solemnly, but before running off he wrapped himself around Arielleth's leg. Draven watched him with a tenderness he did not always admit to feeling. All the children of the fortress adored her, they sought her hands, her gentle words, the calm that flowed from her like a gift. When little Guillermo finally let go, leaving stains on her tunic, Arielleth sighed. Little Guillermo, you have forgotten again to bow before your lord. The child spun on his heels and made an awkward bow. Draven returned it with a slight nod. Then little Guillermo shot toward the door. Whose children are those? Overgaard asked. Of the household, Draven replied. But they follow my wife as if she were their own lady. A piercing scream cut through the conversation. Overgaard snorted, Draven mirrored the sound. It seems little Guillermo has already found a scyther, Overgaard observed with resignation. Do not pull such a face, Arielleth intervened. Since your departure, a scyther has wandered the house like a restless soul. I believe she has missed you. Is that not so, Pharamond? From the soldier's expression, Draven understood that Pharamond thought quite the opposite. But he answered politely. If my lady says so, I shall accept that remote possibility as truth. Overgaard ground his teeth. Pharamond, you are far too diplomatic. I have no wish to contradict my lady, the man replied calmly. Overgaard took a seat beside Draven. Arielleth offered him wine, he drained it in one swallow. Are Emmerich and Garin at the fortress, he asked. No, Draven answered, accepting his own cup. But he kept Arielleth's hands in his. She inclined her head toward him, an intimate, almost domestic gesture that softened every shadow. Father Brandulf will finally officiate a mass for us, she said. He burned his hand after our wedding, poor man. It took him a long time to recover. Pharamond interjected. Had he allowed Emmerich to examine that burn, it would have healed much sooner. Draven growled. I shall have to speak with him. Do you not like him? Arielleth asked, puzzled. You hardly ever see him. He does not do his work. He lives hidden in the chapel. He is too timid. I did not know you were so devout, Overgaard teased. He is not, Pharamond said without lifting his gaze. Arielleth snorted fondly. He only wishes the priest to fulfill his duties. Draven added with barely concealed pride. His monastery has sent me a letter. I asked that he be replaced. And Arielleth wrote the petition for me. She tapped his arm lightly, forcing him to keep quiet about that detail. Draven smiled. It still amazed him that his wife wished to conceal the fact that she could read and write.
What did the reply say?
Arielleth asked. I shall know after supper, Draven replied. For now, I have more urgent matters. Another scream echoed through the corridor. A scyther was preparing her entrance, as though she were an affronted queen. For the love of God, go tell her to stop shrieking, Draven muttered. Ardgar, I am beginning to dread your visits. Arielleth hurried to soften it.
He did not mean to be discourteous.
His head is full of worries. Draven shook his head slowly. You need not excuse me, my wife. Go to a scyther. She nodded. Before leaving, she added, I shall invite Father Brandolf as well. If he agrees to come, be kind to him at least until supper is finished. After that, you may shout at him all you wish. She had framed it as a plea, but it sounded like an order in disguise. Draven frowned. She answered him with a radiant smile, and disappeared down the corridor. Ardgar took advantage of the silence to speak in a low voice. The king is returning to England. I am prepared, Draven said. When he summons you, I shall accompany you to court. Morhollow must answer for his deeds. I have as much right as you to challenge him.
Half of England would like to see him dead, Faramund growled.
Draven took a sip of wine. The summons has already arrived.
When?
Ardgar asked, surprised. Just before you came, Draven replied. Faramund lifted his gaze.
When do we depart?
The king requires me in London at once. We leave in 2 days. Faramund, this time you stay behind. The soldier did not protest, though surprise flickered briefly across his face. Will you take Arielleth with you? Ardgar asked. No. She will be safer here. Safer from the king's wrath or from Morhollow? From Morhollow. The king would protect her. You trust more than I do, Ardgar admitted. Draven looked at Faramund. I place what I love most in your hands. It could be a trap. Morhollow may have forged the royal seal. The instructions are not the king's usual manner. Faramund was already calculating defenses and contingents. How many men will you take? Morhollow may be waiting for you to leave the fortress to attack. He knows you will not take Arielleth. I know, Draven replied. I have 100 men with me, Ardgar interjected. I will leave them here if you wish. They both began to discuss numbers and defensive positions. Draven headed toward the lit hearth but suddenly stopped. Right at the threshold, he saw Arielleth crossing the corridor. Little Guillermo trotted after her, clutching her skirt, trying not to lose pace. And Draven felt how for a moment, the entire weight of the realm was reduced to that, the sight of his wife moving through light and shadow, carrying with her the peace he did not know how to ask for. Chapter 61. He spoke without thinking. Draven tried to push his wife from his thoughts, as Ardgar and Faramund approached. Nearly 10 minutes had passed, discussing how many men would be needed to protect the Wulfsen stronghold. At last, they sat at the table. Draven took the chair Arielleth already thought of as his throne. Suddenly, little Guillermo burst into the hall. He stopped short when he saw him, pale as one who had crossed paths with a spectre. Draven frowned. The boy looked as though he had faced the devil himself. Guillermo advanced cautiously, sucking his thumb. What is it, lad? Draven asked calmly. Do you want to tell me something? Faramund opened his mouth to intervene, but Draven raised an arm for silence. He turned his chair, leaning toward little Guillermo. The boy hid between his legs, eyes wide. At last he pulled his thumb from his mouth to whisper. He's hitting her. Draven leapt from his seat. Ardgar and Faramund barely grasped what the child had said, when he was already striding through the door. What's happening? Ardgar exclaimed. Arielleth, Faramund roared, breaking into a run. Draven reached the chapel first. The door was barred, he smashed it down with a single blow. The crash alerted the priest. Father Brandolf appeared in the vestibule, using Arielleth as a shield, a stiletto pressed to her throat. Draven did not even allow himself to look at her. If he did, the fury would consume him. All his focus narrowed on the coward who dared touch her. "One more step and I'll slit her throat," the priest shouted, retreating and dragging Arielleth with him. Draven advanced at the same pace, deadly calm. The priest backed up to a table crowded with lit candles. He cast a sideways glance toward the side door. That instant was enough. Draven lunged, knocked the blade away from Arielleth's face, and drove his own knife into the man's neck. Father Brandolf fell dead before he hit the ground. The candles scattered across the floor, setting the table ablaze. Draven ignored the flames. He lifted Arielleth into his arms. She clung to him, trembling. "You took your time," she whispered against his neck, barely sobbing. He drew a deep breath to master his rage before speaking. "Are you all right?" he asked harshly. "I've had better days," she replied, with a faint attempt at humor. But when he raised her face and saw the bruises, the split lip, the swollen eye, fury seized him again. Arielleth laid a hand on his cheek. "It's over, Draven." Ardgar reached the chapel, and seeing the fire shouted for the men. Faramond cleared the remains of the door to make way for his lord. Arielleth noticed his concern and tried to ease it. "Have you noticed how much my husband enjoys breaking down doors?" Faramond blinked, startled, but at last a smile appeared. Draven carried her to their chambers. Only then did he notice she was still crying silently. He lit a fire to warm her, and wrapped her in a blanket. "Did you see how madness shone in his eyes?" she asked, shuddering. "Draven, would you still love me if that man had?" He cut her off with a low murmur. "My love, don't say foolish things. I will love you always." She rested her head against his chest, gathering strength. When she finally spoke, her words froze him. "He was sent to kill me." Draven went rigid. "Sent?" he asked, his voice too calm to be honest. Arielleth nodded, and with broken composure, told him how she had caught the priest without his habit, dressed as a peasant, how he bore no wounds on his hands despite claiming burns, how he grew agitated when she mentioned the letter from the monastery. "He told me Morhollow sent him," she concluded. "That he was to kill me, if the king supported you. How can a man of God harbor such a black soul?" She settled back against him. "Were you afraid, Draven?" "I don't get afraid," he replied. "I get angry." She smiled, understanding the truth behind his words. She spoke without thinking, distracted by warmth and weariness, tracing idle circles on his leg. "I knew you would come, though you were late." He growled. "That bastard could have killed you." "No. Not while you live." That absolute faith pierced him like a lance. "Good heavens, it's terribly hot in here," she murmured. "You were shaking." "I'm better now," she admitted. When Draven said he would fetch the monastery's letter, she shook her head, taking his hand. "I don't want you to go yet." He tried to persuade her to rest, but Arielleth, with an innocence she knew was false, looked at him as she loosened the ties of her shirt. "Help me take this off," she asked. Draven narrowed his eyes, suspecting the direction of the conversation. She did nothing to help as he undressed her. "What made you come so fast?" she asked. "Little Guillermo. He saw you, and ran to warn me. He's 5 years old. You should reward him." Draven cursed under his breath. "It's my fault. I should have protected my own house, as I protect my men." "That is my duty," Arielleth replied gently. "Though, none of this would have happened if I knew how to defend myself." He blinked, confused, as she went on. "Tomrich is learning to fight. I want to learn too. You must teach me, Draven." He let that pass for now. "We'll talk about that later." Arielleth nodded, and with a sudden spark in her eyes declared, "For now you must tend to my needs. I order you." "Oh," he murmured. She let the shirt fall. Draven shook his head with a sigh. "You're covered in bruises." "You'll find a way," she cut in. I know I'm not beautiful. I look like a cyclops, don't I?
Horrible, he replied with mock solemnity.
I can barely stand to look at you. She laughed. And even as he joked, he laid her down carefully and loosened the last ties.
You'll have to close your eyes when you make love to me, she decreed.
I'll endure the torment, he promised. Then she whispered, with a fragility that pierced him. I need your touch, Draven. It purifies me. It gives me my soul back. Draven kissed her with infinite gentleness. And as soon as she returned the kiss, every shadow fell away. There were only the two of them, wrapped in each other, reborn amid fire and night. Chapter 62. Like a storm. Irony had it that Arielleth's small misfortune brought Ardgar and Asaitha closer together without intending to. She had insisted on attending dinner with the rest of the family, thus when she entered the hall on Draven's arm, she found Asaitha already seated, and Baron Ardgar pacing restlessly before the fire, as though searching the flames for an answer he could not put into words. Draven let out a resigned sigh. He had no spirit left for another of his sister's scenes. Arielleth begged him for patience, though she herself was not sure she possessed any. The moment Asaitha saw her, she cried out, making Ardgar jump.
What happened to you?
Did Silas throw you from your horse? The young woman asked, horrified. Arielleth turned her head toward Draven. Before we left the chamber, you assured me I was presentable, she murmured. I lied, he laughed, without a trace of shame. I should have looked in Osather's mirror, Arielleth added dryly. Judging by her expression, I'm about to ruin everyone's appetite. Only an invading army could ruin mine, Draven replied.
I spent all my strength trying to please you.
She squeezed his hand to silence him, they were too close to Asaitha. I needed you to love me, she whispered. I needed to erase that priest's cursed touch. That's why I was so bold. Bold? Draven held back a laugh. You turned into a... She cut him off again with a stern look. Ardgar, bewildered, stepped in to explain the obvious. Asaitha sighed with compassion. Oh, Arielleth, you're a mess. Lying is a sin, husband, she observed, glancing sideways at him. Draven decreed that Father Brandulf's name would not be spoken during dinner, and everyone obeyed with relief. Asaitha returned to ignoring Ardgar, and when they rose from the table, he gathered his courage to offer her a compliment. Her reply was so cutting that Draven finally lost his patience. I want to speak with both of you, he said coldly. He guided them toward the fire. He sat in his great chair. When Ardgar tried to take another, Draven stopped him. Stand there beside Asaitha. Then he turned to his sister. Do you believe I can discern what is best for you? Asaitha nodded, eyes wide. Then allow Ardgar to kiss you. Now. What? Asaitha went pale, horrified. Arielleth wished to erase the memory of Brandulf, Draven continued, implacable. You have never been kissed by a man who loves you. Let Ardgar offer you that first memory, and then decide whether it feels sweet or unbearable. In Arielleth's view, it was a perfect idea. Asaitha, red as a poppy, could barely breathe. In front of everyone. Ardgar took her hand, looking at her tenderly. I would kiss you before the whole world if you allowed it. Before Asaitha could flee, he bent and placed a gentle kiss on her lips. She stared at him, uncomprehending, lost. He kissed her again with such absolute delicacy that he did not even touch her with his hands, he held her only with his mouth. Arielleth, feeling foolish for watching them, took refuge by sitting on the arm of Draven's chair, staring at the ceiling so as not to intrude on such an intimate moment. When Ardgar drew back, Asaitha was flushed, confused, trembling.
He doesn't kiss like Rend, she murmured, then stopped short, horrified.
She looked at Arielleth, pleading. You must know, Arielleth said gently. Ardgar and Draven frowned, not understanding. I can't say it myself, Asaitha whimpered. Will you? Please. Only if you allow me to tell Draven as well. Asaitha looked at her brother. She saw strength in him but also the question. And she nodded. Then she turned back to Overgaard. You won't want to kiss me again once you know the truth. I'm sorry. I should have said it sooner. And she burst into tears. Overgaard tried to embrace her, but she recoiled. I think I love you, she whispered. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. With that she fled the hall. Arielleth wished she had not promised anything. She knew it would break both men's hearts. Overgaard, she said tensely, please sit down. Draven, promise you won't be angry with me. I won't be angry, he assured her. Arielleth lowered her gaze and told everything that had happened with Scyther, the disappointment, the deception, Morhollow's innocent poison, and the name Rendgar. When she finished, she braced for the explosion. But neither spoke. Overgaard stood and left without a word.
What will he do?
Arielleth asked, clumsily wiping away her tears. The gesture hurt, the bruises burned. I don't know, Draven replied, with a dangerous calm. Is he angry with me?
No. But now I understand.
He looked at her with sudden clarity. Rendgar is the man you wanted to kill. Arielleth bowed her head. I couldn't allow his deception to go unpunished. Even though I swore to keep silent. I was torn between God and justice. God forgive me, but I want him dead. Draven pulled her into his lap and held her tenderly. She was trembling. They did not know whether Overgaard would return, whether he would fight for Scyther, or whether he would disappear.
Rendgar is my concern, Draven said.
No. Leave him. It was Overgaard who spoke. He entered like a storm, shaking with rage. He's mine, Draven. And I'll kill you if you try to stop me. Arielleth gasped, but Draven took no offense. It is your right, he conceded. And I will stand at your side. And I at yours when the time comes to face Morhollow, Overgaard replied, finally collapsing into a chair. Arielleth, could you tell Scyther that I wish to speak with her? Arielleth obeyed, fearing what she would find. Scyther, a sea of tears, awaited her sentence. Everything will be all right, Arielleth tried to console her. No, Arielleth, she sobbed. Kissing him was one thing. But never could I receive him in my bed.
You don't know that yet, Arielleth replied.
Overgaard knows how to wait. But Scyther was convinced he would abandon her. She was wrong. Overgaard waited for her at the foot of the stairs, and without a word took her hand and led her to a secluded place. Draven returned to Arielleth. You are exhausted, my love. It's time to rest. I must wait for Scyther, she might need me. I am the one who needs you. Overgaard will take care of her. She nodded. They climbed the stairs together. Tomorrow I will leave for a few days, Draven added. It will be brief. Important matters, she asked, trying not to sound hurt. Urgent matters, he said, avoiding details. He did not wish to add more weight to his wife's day. Morwenna appeared on the stairs. Draven stopped her. Morwenna, your son has been brave today. I will rack my brains to devise a reward worthy of him. The woman could scarcely speak for emotion. Later, alone at last, Arielleth caressed her husband's cheek. You are a good man, Draven. Another reason to love you. He shrugged, awkward with praise. I do my duty. She laughed. I've been denied my bath, she teased.
Perhaps I'll go to the lake.
An excellent idea, he said. I'll go with you. I was only joking. I have no intention of bathing in that pond of yours. A shiver ran through her. When I was a child, I fell into one. I got stuck in the mud. Draven laughed. My lake is rocky, and the moon barely lights it. No one goes there at this hour. They reached their chamber. She undressed quickly and slipped beneath the blankets. Don't you want to swim with me? He asked, amused. No. Scyther and Overgaard are in the garden and… Draven, what are you doing? He was holding her mantle. Cover yourself. We're going to the lake. She hesitated. Desire wrestled with shame.
You said I was exhausted.
I lied. That is an offense, husband. She raised the blanket like a shield. The soap is in the box. But he was faster. He returned with the soap, the mantle, and a small mirror. You've got an eye as black as the one you gave Emric, he joked. I never gave Emric a black eye. You're mocking me. She took the mirror and screamed. You look like a cyclops. Draven laughed. Arielleth tried to hide beneath her hair. How can you kiss me like this? I'm dreadful. Chapter 63. A love as fierce as the northern cold. Her voice sounded like an ancient lament, and the hint of a smile vanished from Draven's face as he leaned toward her. With his palm he lifted her chin, forcing her to look at him. Because I love you, Arielleth, he said with a gravity that seemed carved in stone. You are everything I ever desired, and more than I ever knew I could long for. Do you think a few scratches could break my heart? Or that what I feel for you is something fragile? She shook her head slowly. She pushed the blanket aside, rose to her feet, and for the first time felt no shame. Draven loved her, nothing else mattered. Then let's go to the lake, she whispered. Before I start begging you to take me in your arms. He laughed softly, kissed her with a tenderness that stole her breath. There will be time for all of that, my light. He draped the cloak over her shoulders, lifted her into his arms and carried her outside. No one saw them cross the fortress. The moon was barely a pale fingernail against the sky. On the most secluded shore, Arielleth tested the water with her toes and shivered. It's freezing, she protested. Give it a moment, he replied, stripping off his clothes with the easy confidence of a warrior used to the elements. He dove into the water in a perfect arc. She sat on the edge, sliding in little by little, and barely had time to clutch the cloak before Draven surfaced and snatched it away with a mischievous gesture. The cold struck her, but she soon discovered something surprising. Swimming without weight or cloth was a wild freedom. She laughed at herself, admitting that the daring made her feel scandalously alive. When she submerged her head for the third time, Draven was in front of her. She was about to speak, but the gleam in his eyes made her smile. The water caressed her chest. He could not resist covering her with his hands. She let herself fall against him, seeking his mouth. Draven kissed her with an urgency that set her ablaze from within. She answered by tracing his torso beneath the water, trembling and bold. He gripped her waist, deepened the kiss, lifted her until she was pressed to his chest. Arielleth wrapped her legs around his hips when he murmured, hoarse, what he wanted from her. And though Draven tried to restrain himself, she took his face and gasped. Later you'll be gentle, not now. The world narrowed to the shiver of the water, and the force with which they clung to each other. He had to cover her mouth with his hand to stifle her moans. She surrendered against his neck, exhausted and happy. You are a wild woman, Draven laughed, stroking her cheek. Do you think anyone might have seen us? She asked, suddenly horrified. There isn't enough light, love. Thank heavens. He arched a brow. Though your cries could have woken the dead. Draven. Arielleth tried to sink beneath the water, but he caught her laughing. They shoved each other, splashed, sought each other like two young creatures. At last they ended up spent, floating beneath the night. He tried to teach her how to swim. You swim as if you're about to sink at any moment, he snorted. She kissed him to show she wasn't offended. When they returned to the chamber, Arielleth could barely stay awake. Draven meanwhile watched her from the bed, propped on his elbows as she untangled her hair. They were naked, without a trace of shame between them. I've been summoned to court, he said at last with apparent nonchalance. I leave tomorrow. She turned, uneasy. Summoned? Because of me? I wanted to spare you worry, he replied. I was trying to protect you. Will it be dangerous? He opened his mouth to answer, but she interrupted him. Of course it will be. Then when do we leave? We don't leave, Draven corrected. I leave. You'll stay here. She frowned, ready to argue, but he shook his head before she could speak. If I fear for you, I won't be able to think clearly. This is my decision.
But you'll come back, won't you?
Draven looked taken aback.
Of course I'll come back. When?
I don't know. Weeks, perhaps months. In her eyes he saw an old fear, born of years of abandonment. He drew her close and kissed her softly. I will always come back to you, Arielleth. You are my wife by all the heavens. She smiled weakly. If you let yourself be killed, I'll find your grave and spit on it.
Then I'll do everything I can to stay alive.
Promised. Promised. Arielleth cupped his face in her hands. You're taking my heart with you, my fierce thief. Draven smiled, resting his forehead against hers. No, my love.
The heart that's missing is mine.
And he kept his promise to love her again before dawn. Chapter 64. Bad news. Before dawn dispelled the darkness, Draven was already fully dressed. He had summoned Faramund, and was waiting for him in the hall, the monastery's letter in his hands. The seal broke with a dry crack. Faramund sat beside him as Wenleth came in with a plate of bread and cheese. By the time Draven finished reading, his vassal had already eaten most of the breakfast. The lord flung the missive aside with abrupt force. The table trembled under the blow of his fist. Bad news? Faramund asked. Exactly what I feared. There is no Father Brandolf.
Then the man you killed?
Faramund began. An agent of Morhollow, Draven growled. I suspected it, and yet I still thought he was a priest. Faramund shrugged. At least you didn't take the life of a man of the church. And he never managed to report back to Morhollow, he never left the fortress. I would have noticed. If I had been more attentive, I would have seen his strange behavior. My carelessness nearly cost my wife her life. She doesn't blame you, Faramund said calmly. And given how things went, it could have been far worse. Imagine if she had heard all our discussions. The vassal shuddered at the thought. And to make matters worse, Draven added, striking the table again, our marriage isn't even valid. The letter fell beside a vase of flowers. By all the heavens. I hadn't thought of that, Faramund stammered. Neither has Arielleth, Draven murmured. But she will soon, and it will frighten her. If I could, I'd find a priest right now and marry her again before leaving. It would take weeks to bring one, Faramund reminded him. Draven nodded. I won't tell her about this impostor. When I return, I'll bring a priest with me. I'll reveal the truth, only a few minutes before we wed again. Damn it, what a disaster. Faramund smiled with a trace of compassion. He was right, Ariel's heart would lurch. Draven pushed the worry aside with visible effort, and explained his plans point by point. When he finished, he rested a hand on Faramund's shoulder. You were trained by the best. I trust you completely, he said with gentle irony since he himself had been that instructor. Faramund laughed. You're leaving enough soldiers to conquer half of England. Have you seen Overgaard? Draven asked.
Not yet.
The men are already gathering by the stables. He'll be there waiting for you. They made their way to the stables. Draven addressed the troops, warning them that they might be riding straight into a trap. Then he turned to the men who would remain to defend the fortress. Morhollow may wait until we leave to launch an attack, he reminded them. When he returned to the hall, Arielleth was descending the stairs with a smile that loosened his chest. He drew her to him and kissed her. Remember your promise, she whispered. You told me you'd take every precaution. I will, he replied, slipping an arm around her shoulders. They walked together toward the stables and past the chapel blackened by fire. Draven paused for a moment. The vestibule will have to be rebuilt, he murmured. The mention of the temple brought the letter to Arielleth's mind. Do you have time to show it to me? I'm terribly curious. I've already read it. Then you can read. I suspected it. You never boast of your skills. Every time I think I know you completely, you surprise me again. He smiled. Am I that unpredictable? In some things always the same, she laughed then sighed. I wish you didn't have to leave. I wanted you to teach me to defend myself. If I fought like Tomrich, you'd surely take me with you. I wouldn't, Draven replied. But I'll begin your training as soon as I return, I promise. There were certain skills every woman should know, he admitted to himself. And Arielleth's determination was hard to ignore. Seeing that Overgaard had not yet arrived, he used the last minutes with her.
Start with this, he said.
If you fight with your right hand, carry the dagger on the left side. He took the stiletto and set it in a ring at her waist. Why? Because you'll draw it faster. Sometimes every second matters. You wear your sword on the right and draw it with your left. The stairs. Is it because they're on the left flank of the tower? He nodded. My father was left-handed like me. If an invader comes in, he comes from below. My father could brace himself against the wall with his strong arm, and keep fighting with his left. He was a clever man, Arielleth said. Almost everyone is right-handed, aren't they? What an admirable idea, building a fortress that favored his hand. He took the idea from one of his uncles, Draven admitted. He thought he had diverted her attention, but she returned to the point with sure instinct.
What did the letter say, Draven?
Nothing important, he lied. Brandulf left the monastery when he was sent to Morhollow's castle. Lying to her was almost impossible, but he only sought to protect her. Perhaps he was a good man before he met my brother, Arielleth said sadly. I'll make sure his body is returned to the monastery, so they may receive his remains. No. The sharpness of his voice startled her. I mean, certain arrangements still need to be made. She looked at him confused, but Overgaard's arrival distracted her. A Scyther and I will marry as soon as all this is over, Overgaard announced, radiant.
She's finally said yes.
Arielleth smiled. Draven clapped him on the shoulder.
Where is she?
In her chamber, crying. I've already said my goodbyes. Are you sure you want to marry my sister? Draven said, unable to resist the joke.
She spends half the day crying.
Draven. Arielleth protested. Overgaard laughed. I hope she runs out of tears before the wedding. Draven turned back to his wife then, wrapped his arms around her, and kissed her with fervor, giving her no time to understand. I'll be back before you even notice I'm gone. Arielleth held herself together bravely. She would not cry. Not there, before so many soldiers setting out. She remained at the center of the courtyard, following her husband with her eyes as he rode away. Faramund stepped to her side. He will return, she said firmly. He gave me his word. And a man of honor does not break his word, Faramund replied.
I'll have to keep myself occupied, she went on.
Draven promised to teach me how to defend myself. To defend yourself? Faramund repeated, taken aback.
Yes, she answered sullenly as though it were her husband's own wish. Perhaps you could teach me.
Do you have a couple of hours a day to show me some technique? Faramund stared at her, astonished. Seeing his hesitation, Arielleth added. If not, I'll speak to Nalan. He can make me a bow. If I practice, I'll soon be accurate. Faramund nearly crossed himself.
But she looked at him with such resolve that he could only nod.
I'll speak to Nalan, he promised. Arielleth showered him with thanks before he bowed to take his leave. As he walked away, Faramund reflected with grim humor. His duty was to protect his lord's wife, but now he had a second mission, to protect his men from her. By the time he reached the forge, he was already laughing. Knowing Lady Arielleth, before the week was out, they would all end up with their backs bristling with arrows. Chapter 65. Honor deserve. Draven was the first to sense the scent of danger. He raised his hand, and the column halted at once. Not a man spoke. The horses stood still as if holding their breath, while a heavy silence settled over the forest. Baron Ardgar at his right waited without moving. He trusted Draven's instincts more than his own. They had fought together before, and though they were the same age, he had always considered himself Draven's pupil. When Draven raised his arm again, several soldiers fanned out. "Too much silence," he murmured. Ardgar nodded, though he frowned. "I wouldn't choose this place for an ambush." "Precisely."
"And how do you know?"
"I haven't seen anything." "I can feel it," Draven replied, his voice low and taut. "They're there. Waiting for us." A faint whistle threaded through the trees. Draven turned at once and gave the order to split into small groups. The scout who had sounded the warning ran toward them. "How many?" Draven asked. "I don't know, my lord, but I've seen many shields." "Then multiply them by 100, Ardgar growled. "They're hiding in the ravine in the hollow," the scout added. Draven nodded. He was about to draw his sword when Ardgar caught his hand. "Remember this, Draven. If Rendgar is among them, I want him for myself." "He's yours," Draven replied with a dangerous calm. "And Morhollow is yours," Ardgar said. Draven shook his head slightly. "He won't be there. That coward hides behind his men, or behind the walls of court. I know it now, Ardgar. The letter was a ruse. It didn't come from the king, but from Morhollow. And this will be the last time he deceives me." He waited until a third of his men completed a semicircle along the western flank. Another third did the same on the opposite side. The remaining third formed behind him, ready for the frontal assault. Ardgar could not hide a spark of pride. "They've fallen into their own trap.
Now close the circle.
Give the cry, Ardgar." It was an honor Draven owed him. Ardgar lifted his sword to the sky, and loosed a bellow that made the mountain tremble. The answer was immediate, a roar of steel surging toward the enemy. The trap snapped shut. And the battle, as always, would belong to the strongest. The ambushers, hidden like vermin behind rocks and fallen trunks, found themselves surrounded in the blink of an eye. Draven's men advanced with the precision of an inexorable tide. They fought with fierce discipline, and secured victory in a matter of minutes. There were no prisoners. Near the very end, Ardgar saw him. Rendgar. At the far end of the hollow, their gazes collided like crossed blades. Rendgar smiled with contempt and mounted his horse, believing he had time enough to flee. Ardgar charged like a madman. He fought his way through with brutal blows, blind with rage, desperate to reach him. Draven had to cover his back more than once, shouting at him to regain his senses. Draven's fury burned beneath his skin. He demanded discipline from all his men, and now Ardgar, a baron, an equal, was behaving like a novice ruled by anger. This was no common rage, it was a fury that bled. Rendgar, still mounted, watched Ardgar's clumsy, seemingly uncontrolled advance. It reassured him, Ardgar was on foot. Easy prey. His smile burst into laughter when he saw the baron stumble and drop to his knees. Rendgar spurred his mount, sword in hand, charging down toward him. Ardgar bowed his head, feigning dizziness. He waited. Counted every heartbeat. And when the horse's shadow fell over him, he leapt aside with a hawk's speed. Rendgar's blade cut the air and found no flesh. Ardgar answered with a flat blow that unbalanced his foe and hurled him to the ground. Rendgar rolled, trying to recover his weapon, but Ardgar crushed his hand beneath his boot. The traitor looked up and found the tip of a sword at his throat. One slight pressure and Rendgar trembled like a child. "Will there be women to rape in hell, Rendgar?" Ardgar asked in a voice of iron. The man's eyes bulged. In the seconds before his death, he understood that Ardgar knew the truth about a Scyther. Draven did not arrive in time to witness the duel. The battle was ending, and he was inspecting ranks, counting the dead, tending to the wounded. Hours later, with the sun already dying, he went in search of Ardgar. He found him seated on a rock, lost in thought. "What in the hell is wrong with you?" Draven asked. "And where is your sword?" Ardgar lifted his gaze. His swollen reddened eyes said more than any words. "Where it belongs," he answered, his voice hollow, devoid of emotion. Draven did not understand, until he found Rengar's body. Ardgar's sword was still there, driven deep into his groin. Chapter 66. Battlefield. They made camp on the ridge overlooking the battlefield. Draven and Ardgar ate a meager meal without speaking until darkness fell. Ardgar let his anger cool. Draven by contrast let his grow. And when Ardgar finally spoke, he broke the dam of his anguish. "I've lived a lie with a scyther all this time," he confessed. "I believed that one day she would accept what happened to her. I swore I would kill Rengar, and it seemed simple enough, until I saw him. Something broke inside me." The wretch was laughing. "Why are you telling me this?" Draven asked calmly. Ardgar gave a brief, bitter smile. "Because I have the impression you want to run me through with a sword." "You fought like a madman," Draven replied. "If I hadn't covered your back, you wouldn't have reached the hill. You'd be dead. Your thirst for vengeance nearly killed you." He fell silent, letting his friend weigh his words. It was then that he understood how much anger he himself had been carrying. He was furious with Ardgar, because he had seen in him a flaw that was also his own. "I was a fool. I have no excuses," Ardgar conceded. It was not an easy admission for him. "I'm not asking for apologies. But learn the lesson. I am no better. My own hunger for revenge blinded me as well. Arielleth was wounded, because I took her prisoner. She could have died. We've both behaved like idiots." "That's true," Ardgar admitted. "I won't repeat this to anyone but you, Draven. You say you almost lost Arielleth, and that you would have lived never knowing her magic, never knowing what awaited you." "Her magic?" Draven smiled, amused by his friend's romanticism. "I can't explain it well," Ardgar murmured, blushing. "She's perfect. And though you may now regret having captured her, I thank you for it. Only she could give a scyther back to me." "I never regretted capturing Arielleth," Draven corrected. "Only dragging her into my war against Morhollow." "Ah, my sweeter scyther." Ardgar sighed. "She could have died today. And a scyther would have lost forever the joy that only I can give her." Draven stifled a laugh. "I'll tell you something, and if you spread it I'll slit your throat," Ardgar said solemnly. "I made a scyther a promise before she agreed to marry me." Draven raised an eyebrow. "I promised I would never touch her." Draven shook his head, on the verge of laughter. "You have a talent for complicating your life. Do you intend to keep that promise now?" "Yes." "Will you live like a monk in your own house?" "No. I've learned from you." "From me?" "You promised a scyther she could live under your roof for as long as she wished, remember? And then you advised me to settle in your fortress, to win her over. It was brilliant. I'll do the same." "I see," Draven said. "No you don't," Ardgar replied laughing. "I promise not to touch her, but she is free to touch me whenever she wants." Draven finally smiled, understanding. "It will take time." "I know. She loves me, but she doesn't fully trust yet. I accepted her conditions, because I know she won't be able to resist forever." "No one can," he added, with a hint of vanity that made Draven laugh. "We should rest." "Do we leave for London tomorrow?" Ardgar asked. "No. First we'll go to the fortress of the Baron of Greymarsh. That's where I'll begin to gather my allies." Ardgar studied him closely. "Them as well?" All the barons acknowledged Draven as a natural leader. Each had sent his finest men to learn under his command. He had never asked them for support, but none would deny it. "I don't want them under my orders but at my side as equals," Draven explained. "I'm not going to challenge the king, only to confront him. There's a difference." "I'll remain at your side, though you already knew that," Ardgar declared. Morhollow has plotted his final betrayal. I don't believe the king knows of his corruption, but I will lay it bare before him myself. He cannot keep ignoring it. There will be justice. Will you speak the truth before all the barons?
Yes.
They all know what happened to a scyther. Now they must know everything. Ardgar went pale. Will a scyther have to appear?
No.
She'll stay at home. I won't subject her to that. Ardgar let out a sigh of relief.
Then why tell it?
Because the king must hear the truth from my own lips before them all. Do you believe he'll act with honor?
He always has with me.
I won't judge him lightly. Ardgar nodded. Arielleth will have to come with us, won't she?
Yes.
Morhollow used her. I did too. Only she can corroborate what happened. It will be her word against mine if she doesn't speak. The weight of that decision pressed on Draven. Ardgar sensed it. You saved her from Morhollow, he reminded him. A scyther told me of her past. Draven nodded. He was tired. Since he had known Arielleth's love, he longed for every minute at her side. He found himself thinking of Ulysses, the hero of the tales she adored, 10 years of perils before returning to his wife's embrace. He would have to wait barely 2 weeks to hold her again, and yet he sighed like a ridiculous lover. At least we'll have time before we reach London. Time for what? Draven did not realize he had spoken aloud, until Ardgar questioned him. To marry her. Ardgar's eyes flew wide open. Draven turned away, and let his friend process the news. Ulysses sailed for 10 years to return home. Penelope endured 10 years so that a home might be worthy of his return.
Not all warriors go to war.
Some fight where no one looks in patience, waiting and faith. They say Ariadne saved Theseus from the labyrinth with a thread. But no one remembers that it was Theseus who was lost, and Ariadne who saw clearly. In every labyrinth there is a thread. Sometimes it is held by a warrior. Sometimes by a woman who no longer fears the dark. Draven's fortress had changed in his absence, the result of precautions ordered by the Baroness. Mornings passed in silence. Although the weather invited outdoor work, washing clothes, weaving wicker, everyone waited until dusk to go outside. They preferred to remain indoors while Arielleth practiced with the bow. She was determined to master it, to the despair of poor Pharamond, who had been tasked with training her. After hours of practice, her aim had barely improved. She always shot a full meter above the target. Pharamond repeated his instructions again and again, but nothing managed to correct that charming and infuriating flaw. Narlan supplied her with arrows without pause. He had already lost 100 before she learned to keep her shots within the walls. Only then could they recover arrows embedded in trees, huts, and the occasional piece of clothing hung out to dry. Pharamond was patient. He knew she wanted to defend herself, but above all she wanted to make her husband proud. It wasn't a guess, she told him so several times a day. And he understood the reason. Arielleth feared he might give up on teaching her. Of course, he would never deny her anything. One afternoon, a messenger from the king arrived. Pharamond received him in the great hall, expecting spoken instructions, but the man handed over only a rolled parchment. Pharamond called Morwenna to see to the emissary. Arielleth entered, just as they were leaving for the kitchen.
What news is that, Pharamond?
Is it a letter from Draven?
It's a message from the king, he replied.
He crossed the hall, and opened a small carved wooden box resting on a chest. Arielleth had always thought it was merely decorative, until she saw him place the letter inside. There were many others within. Draven's important documents. Won't you read it now? She asked. It will wait until the Baron returns, Pharamond said. His irritation showed plainly on his face. I could summon a monk. I can read it myself, Arielleth interrupted. Pharamond stared at her, incredulous. Arielleth felt the blush rise to her cheeks. It was still difficult to admit it aloud.
Yes.
I can read, she confessed, with a thread of pride and another of shame. But I prefer that no one know. I don't wish to become the subject of whispers. Faramund nodded, still surprised. Draven left 3 weeks ago, she reminded him gently. And you said it might be another month before he returns. Do you truly wish to wait for a monk to learn the message?
No, of course not.
He yielded at last. He opened the carved box, took the parchment, and handed it to her with a respectful inclination of the head. Then he leaned against the table, arms crossed, waiting. The letter was written in Latin. Arielleth's voice did not falter as she translated, but by the end her hands were trembling. The king offered no greeting to Wulfsen. His anger flashed in every line. He demanded Arielleth's presence at court, and was already sending troops to collect her. Faramund went pale. So, the king is coming for you. Arielleth understood the conflict in his gaze. He owed loyalty to Draven but also to the sovereign. And the king's will overrode all others. Is there anything else, my lady? He asked cautiously. She drew a breath, trying to smile. I wish you hadn't asked, she whispered. Then with a courage as fragile as glass, for the king, there are only 2 barons and 2 sisters. He proposes to return each sister to her rightful brother. Her eyes filled with tears. The other option is that Draven take me as his wife, she finished, almost without a voice. Faramund frowned. Evidently His Majesty is unaware that you are already married. Arielleth closed her eyes. And if Draven officially marries me, then a Scyther would have to marry Morhollow. God preserve us, Faramund growled in disgust. A Scyther must not know anything, she said quickly. I will tell her only that the king requests my presence. Faramund reflected for a moment. My lady, besides reading, do you know how to write? She nodded. Then perhaps we still have time, he declared with sudden determination. Time for? To bring your husband back. He fetched the box and set it before her.
There is parchment and ink here.
We will write to Draven. Arielleth sat down at once. Faramund began to pace, searching for the words that would convey the gravity of the moment. Only then did she notice another parchment on the table, beside the vase of flowers. The seal was broken. It was from the monastery of Ashenmere. Out of simple curiosity, she unfolded the letter. And her heart tightened. Faramund turned just as she finished reading. He saw the seal, recognized it, and knew there was nothing left to hide. I didn't want to worry you, he murmured, resting a hand on her shoulder. Arielleth looked up. Her calm was deceptive. Faramund recognized in her the same silent terror from the days when she had arrived at the castle as a prisoner. My lady, Draven loves you, he said, unable to soften the harshness in his voice. He is not my husband, is he? She did not wait for an answer. She turned back to the table, and with painful courtesy asked what she should write to the king. Faramund understood that he had lost. He would leave the explanation to Draven. They focused on drafting a brief reply. Wulfsen was absent and had not yet received the royal orders. Arielleth read the letter twice before Faramund sealed it, and handed it to the messenger with urgent instructions. Afterward, she went up to her chambers to prepare a small bundle, in case the king's soldiers arrived before dawn, and spent the rest of the day with a Scyther, carefully hiding the possibility of a marriage to Morhollow. She would never allow such a fate. Nor would she force such a choice upon Draven. That night, unable to eat, she took refuge in the tower. For an hour she stared at the horizon, letting her emotions wash over her. If only they had uncovered Brandulf's deception sooner. She blamed herself for being distracted by trivialities, and then she blamed Draven. If he had not intimidated her so much during that false ceremony, she might have noticed the deceit. Not for a moment did she suspect that Draven knew the truth. She was convinced he too had believed in that false marriage. And yet she was still furious. He had hidden the monastery's letter from her. And he knew how much she valued truth.
Just wait until I see you, she muttered through clenched teeth.
A scyther isn't the only one who knows how to shout. Anger did her no good, she ended up crying again. Near midnight, she leaned out the window. The moon shone like a silver coin. Was Draven seeing it too? Was he sleeping beneath the open sky, or in some chamber of the king? Then a movement on the crest of the hill caught her attention. Her wolf. Was it real? The same one she had seen months before? Its size made it hard to believe it was merely a wild dog. She wished Draven were beside her to see it with his own eyes. The animal took the bone she had left there, then vanished into the shadows. Perhaps it was a hallucination. Perhaps only a large dog. Draven was her true wolf. He loved her, that she had no doubt. He might lie to her about a letter, but not about his heart. The thought comforted her. Draven had too much honor to deceive her in something so sacred. She tried to sleep without success. Fear pressed on her chest like a cruel hand. She had believed that by bearing his name she would be safe forever. But no longer. The king was claiming her. And he could return her to Morhollow. Arielleth fell to her knees and began to pray. She prayed for Draven, for a scyther, for Overgaard, for Emric and Garin. And at the end, in a broken whisper, she prayed for herself. She asked for courage. The courage needed to look the demon in the eyes once more. Chapter 67. In the devil's hands. The moment he crossed the outer wall of the fortress, Draven knew that something had broken. Faramond was not there to receive him. Nor was Arielleth. A stab of terror pierced his chest. He spurred his horse, thundered across the bridge, and burst into the courtyard like a storm. A scyther came running down the stairs, halting for an instant when she recognized them. Then she threw herself into Overgaard's arms, and the moment he caught her she broke into tears. Long minutes passed before they managed to draw a coherent word from her. It was then that Roderick arrived, a giant with a surprisingly weak voice, to deliver his report. While Overgaard tried to soothe a scyther, the man explained that the king's soldiers had come to take Arielleth away. Did they bear the royal seal? Draven asked, his voice taut as a drawn bow. Roderick frowned. I couldn't say, my lord. I did not see the letter. And your wife insisted on taking it with her. He lowered his voice even further. She did not want your sister a scyther to read it. Draven tried to make sense of that gesture. He concluded that the missive must contain some threat against a scyther, and that Arielleth had wanted to protect her. The king would not have threatened her. Not him, his most faithful vassal. That stench belonged unmistakably to Morhollow. Draven would have wagered his life on it. He ordered them to depart at once. Fury scorched his thoughts, he could barely reason. The only thing that eased him was knowing that Faramond had escorted his wife with a handful of trusted men. Roderick explained that he had not taken more, so as not to offend the king. So Faramond believed the order was genuine. Draven growled. He did not share any doubts with me, my lord. He asked for a fresh horse. When the groom appeared with Silas, Draven asked why Arielleth had not chosen him for the journey to court. Torvin swallowed before answering. She feared that her brother would see he was your horse, and that he might harm him, my lord. That is what she told me. She even asked for one of the king's horses. Draven nodded. Typical of her, to worry about an animal before her own safety. A scyther begged to go with them. Draven was already mounted, but his sister's desperate cries forced Overgaard to calm her with a hastily sworn oath, one in which he invoked the grave of a mother who still breathed. Draven of course did not comment on the lie, it had worked. Do you think you can catch up with the Baroness? Torvin dared to ask. Draven turned his head. He saw the fear in the boy's eyes, and for the first time since entering the courtyard he felt a thread of comfort. We are a week behind, he replied, but I will bring your lady back. He did not speak again for half the road to London. Overgaard thought that were it not for the horse's exhaustion, Draven would not have halted for even a moment. When they paused, the Baron of Wulfsen drew away from the group. Overgaard gave him a few minutes, then approached. "Allow me a word of counsel, my friend," he said cautiously. Draven looked at him, devoid of patience. "Do you remember my reaction when I saw Rendgar?" Overgaard went on. "Do not let anger blind you. I will stand behind you with all I have when we reach court." Draven nodded stiffly. "I will regain control when I see Arielleth. She should have arrived a week ago. God knows what Morhollow has done to her. If he has touched her." "He will not," Overgaard interrupted. "Morhollow needs allies, not enemies. There will be too many eyes upon him. He will play the affectionate brother." "I hope you are right," Draven murmured. "I am worried about her." Overgaard clapped a hand on his shoulder. "By the gods, you are as afraid of losing her as I was of losing Isaitha." Draven let out a bitter breath. "What a pair of arrogant fools we are. Do not fear my wrath. When I see my wife, I will calm myself." "Good," Overgaard said. "But there is another matter. Isaitha told me about the monastery's message." Draven stiffened. "How did she learn of it?" "Arielleth told her. She found it and read it." The weight fell on Draven's shoulders like a stone. "Do you know how she reacted? Was she angry?" "God, I hope she was." Overgaard looked at him, bewildered. "Why would you want her to be angry?" "Because I lied to her," Draven admitted, his voice low and awkward. "And I would rather she be furious than think I acted in bad faith." He struggled to put into words what burned within him. "When I first met Arielleth, she assured me that Morhollow would never come after her. She meant it. He had convinced her she was worth nothing. He was her sole guardian for 2 years, until they sent her to her uncle. You know what cruelties Morhollow is capable of. I have seen her regain her strength, but she is still vulnerable." Overgaard nodded gravely. "And you would have wished to be the one to tell her that Brandulf was no true priest?" "Yes. If she learns it from Morhollow's lips, the blow will be far crueler. She asked me to teach her to defend herself, you know? But there was no time. I did not make time. If anything happens to her..." Fear tore at him fierce. Arielleth was once more in the demon's hands. And the thought froze his blood. Overgaard found no words to ease that anguish. "The moon is high," he said at last. "It will give us light to ride all night." "Then we will make use of the moon," Draven replied. They did not speak again until, in the distance, they glimpsed the towers that marked the end of the road. Chapter 68. The brother. Arielleth tried to sleep, though she knew it was useless. They had locked her in the chamber adjoining her sister Clarion's. The walls were as thin as parchment, and through them seeped every word of the confrontation between Clarion and Morhollow. She had already heard too much. Disgust knotted her stomach and her temples throbbed. Every breath inside that house made her ill. Morhollow, of course, had played his part to perfection. Before the king's soldiers, he had kissed her fraternally and wrapped her in a calculated embrace. The kindly brother. The honorable man. But the moment they were alone, he showed his true face, a torrent of insults, old hatred, and finally a brutal slap that sent her crashing to the floor. On the very cheek, where his lips had rested an instant before. When he saw the redness that would leave a mark, Morhollow regretted it, not for her sake but for his own. If anyone saw it, they would know the truth. That was why he locked her away, claiming she needed rest after the hardships endured at Wulfsen's hands. But what hurt her most was not him. It was Clarion. She had spent years idealizing her, searching for affection in every silence, inventing reasons to justify the lack of replies to her letters. But once they were together, the truth revealed itself without mercy. Clarion was as self-centered as Morhollow. Isolde, the other sister, had not even come to London. Clarion said she had married the Baron of Morhollow, and did not wish to leave him. Arielleth had not even known she was betrothed. She gave up trying to sleep. Clarion's sharp voice cut through the door, complaining about the shame Arielleth had brought upon her. Then she began to speak of Rasseline. Rasseline, her mother. Arielleth moved closer to the crack in the door. Clarion was sitting on the windowsill, a cup in her hand. Morhollow stood beside her. Both were drinking, as if celebrating a victory. You always wanted that whore from the moment she came into the house, Clarion was saying, venom dripping from every syllable. Arielleth clenched her fists. Her mother's memory defiled like that. Rasseline was beautiful, Morhollow replied curtly. I was surprised when father repudiated her. And he added, as if speaking of a breeding animal, she was promised to the Baron of Greymarsh before father forced her to marry him. Clarion let out a harsh laugh. Greymarsh could not compare to father, but in the end it was he who was made a fool of, wasn't it? I wonder if he knew Rasseline was already carrying his child when he led her to the altar. No, said Morhollow. He never saw Greymarsh again. And when Arielleth was born, father would not even look at her. It was the price of her madness. Clarion took another drink, spilling wine down her tunic without noticing. And you wanted to comfort her, didn't you, Morhollow? She prodded. You were in love with her. But Rasseline despised you. If it hadn't been for the brat, she might have killed herself. God knows I suggested it more than once. She paused, tilting her head. And what if she didn't fall by accident? What if someone pushed her? Morhollow roared, you were always jealous of her. Just as you are now of her daughter. I am jealous of no one. Clarion shouted. And when all this is over, I intend to tell Arielleth the truth about Greymarsh. Perhaps even that you killed her mother. Morhollow struck her cup, sending it flying. Silence. Rasseline slipped. Nothing more. She was fleeing from you, Clarion mocked. Enough, Morhollow pronounced. No one must know that Arielleth does not belong to this family. It would be our ruin. And do you think that little slut will obey what you tell her before the king? Or will she turn against you? She will obey me, Morhollow thundered. She fears me. And she knows I will kill Fredrin if she defies me. She has always been a coward. Pity Rengar's dead, Clarion said. He would have paid well for her. Now no one will want her. I will, Morhollow replied. I will not allow her to marry anyone. Arielleth closed the door before hearing the end of her sister's laughter. She was already running to the chamber pot, where she vomited bile and pain. Then she wept. For her mother. For her stolen childhood. For every cruelty of Morhollow, and of her father. But when she grasped what she had heard meant, that she did not share Morhollow's blood, she wept also with relief. A relief so deep it made her tremble. She had heard the name Greymarsh from Draven's own lips. They were allies. Would he be at court? Had he married? Would he be able to recognize the daughter of the woman he had loved? She kept silent. She knew that revealing it would endanger many. But Draven would have to know. And she had to protect Father Fredrin. And protect Draven himself. Morhollow was convinced she would betray one to save the other, as if her soul were a cheap coin. She thought of a Scyther as well, but that worry felt less urgent. She would soon marry Ardgar, and they would no longer be able to use her as a weapon. Arielleth spent most of the night shaping a plan. She prayed that Morhollow would remain as predictable as ever. That Draven would be safe. And that God would grant her the courage for what lay ahead. At last she closed her eyes. And the same dream returned, the one that had followed her since childhood. When she feared Morhollow would come for her, she imagined Odysseus at her side protecting her. But now the image had changed. Where the hero of her stories once stood, now there was Draven. She had found someone stronger than any myth. Someone who would fight for her. Her wolf. Her guardian. Chapter 69. Vulnerable. The next day, Arielleth accompanied Morhollow to meet the king. As they walked down the corridor leading to His Majesty's private chamber, he turned toward her with a practiced smile. "I trust in your honesty, Arielleth," he murmured. "Limit yourself to telling the king what happened in your house. I will handle the rest." "And do you believe the truth will be enough to incriminate Draven?" she asked. Morhollow's expression cracked at once. He did not like her tone. "Have you recovered your courage, sister? Remember your dear uncle. My men are already prepared. One single order and Fredrin's throat will be slit. And how am I to know you have not already killed him?" Arielleth replied. When he seized her arm violently, she added firm, "You have never known how to restrain your anger. How could I be sure of anything?" Morhollow felt the sting of truth, and as always he answered with brutality. He struck her. The ring split her lip, blood welled at once. "Look what you have forced me to do," he roared, raising his hand again, until a body slammed him against the wall. Faramund emerged from the shadows, gripping him by the throat as if he meant to strangle him. Arielleth had deliberately provoked her brother, and though the vassal's appearance saved her, she did not want Faramund to kill him there and then. "Let him go," she ordered, her voice icy. She rested her hand gently on the soldier's shoulder. "Please, Faramund." He relented, letting Morhollow collapse to his knees, coughing like a wounded animal. Arielleth seized that moment of weakness to whisper to Faramund. "The time has come. Whatever happens, do not contradict me. I am protecting Draven." Faramund nodded, though doubt burned inside him. Protect Draven, at the cost of herself? Even so, he remained silent. He swallowed his disgust when he saw Arielleth help Morhollow back to his feet. "I do not believe a word of your claim that you have not harmed Father Fredrin," she said, stepping away from her brother. "We will settle this here and now." Morhollow looked at her, as if he no longer recognized her. Arielleth was no longer the docile girl he could crush. "What will you tell the king when he sees the bruises you have left on me, Morhollow?" "You will not see the king," he snarled. "I will return you to your chamber. I will speak for us both." "Sooner or later he will want to hear my testimony," she replied. "Today, tomorrow, or in a month. And when he asks me, do you know what I will do?" He did not answer. Arielleth held his gaze. "I will remain silent. I will not utter a single word. I will only look at you." Fury surged in Morhollow like a wave, and he raised his hand again. Faramund took a threatening step forward, and the Baron retreated. "We will speak later," Morhollow spat, casting the vassal a look full of hatred. "When we are alone, I will make you see reason." "No," Arielleth said. "We speak now. Or I will send Faramund to the king, to tell him how you mistreat me." "Do you think he would care?" Morhollow scoffed. "I am his vassal just as you are," she replied. "And he will also learn of your threats against a man of the church. I doubt His Majesty will welcome the idea of one of his barons murdering a priest. The king will not believe you. And you know full well your uncle lives. But if you continue to defy me, I will kill him. Provoke me once more, whore, and I will. And you will send me back with Father Fredrin. That is what you will do." He froze. His plans depended on Arielleth supporting him before the king in his attempt to destroy Draven. And suddenly, she was shifting ground beneath his feet. "You want me to tell only part of the truth," Arielleth continued. "And what if I begin with the time you tried to murder the Baron of Wulfsen? You will answer only what you are asked." "Then grant my request. Let me go with my uncle. You will resolve the conflict with Wulfsen." Arielleth managed to keep her voice steady, though each word tore at her soul. She knew Morhollow longed to see Draven destroyed. "I can ruin your cause before the king," she whispered. "The truth could condemn him, but my silence will condemn you. When all this is over, you will kill me," she finished almost gently. She lifted her chin. "Do as you wish, Morhollow. I fear nothing anymore." He did not waste time. You will leave in 1 hour. You will be escorted by my men. Wulfsen has no rights over you anymore. Arielleth accepted before Faramund could protest. He understood, he would follow her in secret. Then I will return to the fortress of the Wulfsens, she said, turning away. I will speak with the king, Morhollow growled. You win this round, Arielleth, but you know that sooner or later you will have to testify before William. And I will do so truthfully, she promised. Morhollow frowned, and Arielleth added, Of course my testimony will support your cause. Morhollow relaxed at last. Perhaps seeing your uncle will remind you how fragile your position is. Arielleth bowed her head, feigning humility. I have suffered greatly, brother. I hope the king will not object to your request to allow me to depart. Morhollow let out a hoarse laugh. The king? He will not even know. I do not need his permission for such matters. With that he strode down the corridor. Arielleth watched him disappear, then made her way toward her chambers. Faramund intercepted her from the shadows. You risk too much, milady, he whispered. Your husband will not be pleased. Draven is not my husband, she replied. And you must let me act, Faramund. Morhollow must believe his sister has returned. I know you are trying to protect a Scyther, but it is Overgaard who. No, she cut him off. I need time. And I must protect my uncle. Morhollow will kill him if I do not. It is you who must be protected, Faramund insisted. You cannot carry the whole world upon your shoulders. I am more vulnerable here, she said. She gave his arm a gentle pat. Inform Draven where I have gone. He will be the one to decide. Decide what? Faramund asked. Whether he will come for me. Do you doubt it? Arielleth drew a deep breath. No. He will come. And when he does, he will leave men to protect my uncle. I only hope he arrives in time. Faramund could not object. I will not lose sight of you, he promised. At a single call, I will be at your side. You must remain here and speak with Draven. I will put another in my place, Faramund replied. I have given my word to protect my lord's wife. He stressed the word wife. Chapter 70. There, where loyalty is stronger than ice. Though she did not wish to admit it, Arielleth felt an almost physical relief knowing that Faramund would continue to protect her. When she finished gathering her few belongings, she walked briskly to the courtyard beside the royal stables, escorted by 3 of Morhollow's soldiers. They left her alone for a few minutes to prepare the horses. She was grateful not to encounter Clarion again. And Morhollow, fortunately, was still in audience with the king, filling his mind with slanders about Draven. A small crowd had gathered to witness her departure. The bruises on Arielleth's face were far too visible, and she could not help hearing the murmurs behind her. From among the onlookers stepped forward a tall woman with strikingly vivid red hair. She moved with haughty grace, almost regal. She was taller than Arielleth and fuller as well, but possessed of a serene, proud beauty. She did not smile, rather she regarded her with open hostility. Arielleth held her gaze, and asked whether she wished to say something. I take a risk speaking to you in public, the woman began. I must guard my reputation. And speaking to me could harm it? Arielleth replied. The lady seemed genuinely surprised by the question. Of course. You must understand that you are no longer desirable. Arielleth cut short the veiled insult. Then say what you came to say and leave. I am Lady Morena. Arielleth could not hide her startlement. Then you have heard of me. Perhaps Baron Wulfsen has told you that. I have heard of you, Arielleth murmured, her voice barely steady. Lady Morena was immaculate in her splendid gown. Arielleth wore a simple pale blue traveling dress. The contrast between them was painful. Draven's betrothed seemed made of everything Arielleth was not: composure, dignity, an elegance that looked as though it had never left her, not even in childhood. My father and Wulfsen have yet to set the wedding date, Morena continued. I merely wish to tell you that you have all my compassion, poor creature. But I do not blame my future husband. He was only seeking revenge. I wonder whether perhaps he treated you without respect. The woman's concerned tone ignited Arielleth's anger. If you can ask me that, then you do not know the Baron of Wulfsen. She turned her back just as one of Morhollow's men offered her the horse. Once in the saddle, she looked down at Lady Morena. He did not mistreat me, nor did he disrespect me. And now that I have answered, allow me a question. Morena nodded, stiffly. Do you love the Baron of Wulfsen? The silence stretched so long that the answer became obvious. Morena raised an eyebrow, haughty, irritated by the audacity. I am not a poor wretch, Lady Morena, Arielleth said, letting her fury steady her voice. And Draven will not marry you. He will not sign the contract. To do so he would have to renounce his greatest treasure. And what would that treasure be? Morena asked, poisoning every word. Me, Arielleth replied. I am his most precious treasure. And only a fool would renounce what he loves most. Even you should know that Draven is no fool. She spurred the horse, forcing Lady Morena to step aside to avoid being trampled. A cloud of dust covered the woman's immaculate face. That look of superiority was gone. Morena was visibly furious, and Arielleth felt a warm, childish, delicious satisfaction, as if she had just won a small great battle. Because she had. Chapter 71. There is no absence that can extinguish a bond born to endure. Arielleth told him everything. The telling of her misfortunes took nearly 2 days. Father Fredrin wished to hear every word, every nuance, every emotion that still trembled in her voice. The good priest had wept when he saw her cross the threshold of the small house. He confessed that her absence had left him so bereft that, for a few days, he had lost command of himself. Arielleth, of course, shed tears just as freely. He justified his unrestrained welcome by assuring her that, as they were alone, his companions had gone to visit an ailing friend, no one was there to witness that shared fragility. Only when she prepared supper, and they sat together shoulder to shoulder, did Arielleth find the strength to begin her account. She had wished to confine herself to a summary, but her uncle would not allow it. He wanted to know every detail, and he would not let her continue, until he was certain he had understood each turn of the story. Arielleth attributed that habit to his calling. Translator, guardian of ancient chronicles, a man devoted to precise words.
But she also saw what he did not say.
Since their parting she had feared for his health, he seemed more stooped, his movements slower. Yet his gaze remained alive, as keen as ever. When he confessed that his companions would no longer share with him the final years of his life, Arielleth understood that it was not age but loneliness that was wearing him down. She was convinced that Draven would come for her. But after 3 days of silent waiting, hope began to falter. One night, exhausted by so many emotions, she confessed her fears to her uncle. Perhaps, when he saw Lady Morena again he changed his mind, she whispered.
What nonsense, Father Fredrin replied.
I am as certain as you are, my child, that the Baron of Wulfsen did not know Brandolf was not a true priest. He believed he had married you, and to lead a man to that step requires a very real love. You have told me his words. Do you not trust them? I do trust them, Arielleth answered. I know he loves me, my heart knows it. But my mind is still afraid. Yesterday I woke in a start, and my first thought was dreadful. What will I do if he does not come? What if he has changed his mind? Then he would be a fool, Father Fredrin declared. A spark of humor crossed his eyes. Now repeat to me, word for word, what you said to that lady with regal manners and red hair. Arielleth smiled, amused by the way he teased her. I told her that I was Draven's greatest treasure.
Not very humble of me.
You spoke only the truth. Your heart already knows it, your mind only needs to finish believing it. Draven is no fool, she said firmly. He will not forget me. She closed her eyes, resting her head against the back of the chair. She had lived too much in too little time. But there beside her uncle, the world seemed safe again. The old shadows threatened to envelop her. She felt herself on the verge of tears, but forced herself to regain her composure. "I have my virtues," she murmured without realizing it.
"Why did it take me so long to understand that?" "It does not matter how long it took," he replied. "What matters is that at last you know."
A peal of thunder shook the window. Father Fredrin rose to close it. "A storm is coming," he said. "So close it will tear the roof away," Arielleth yawned drowsily. The priest was about to nod when he looked outside and froze. He gripped the frame to keep from falling. It was not thunder that he saw, it was lightning upon the ground. A blaze that leapt from one piece of armor to another, like a bolt reflected by dozens of swords. The sun magnified the flashes of a gathered legion. Silent. Armed. Motionless as a wall of steel, waiting. Father Fredrin narrowed his eyes at the imposing sight. He recognized the warrior at the front. He gave him a slight salute, and sat back down trying to hide his smile. With feigned annoyance he said, "I believe you have visitors, Arielleth. You go. I am far too tired to stand again." She frowned, puzzled. No one had knocked. Even so she rose to oblige him. "It will be Aeltha bringing fresh eggs and stale gossip," she said. The priest let out a laugh so sudden that Arielleth thought he was exaggerating on purpose. Then she opened the door and lost her breath. For long seconds, she did not understand what she was seeing. Draven steady before her, and behind him 100 mounted warriors, all in armor, all looking at her in absolute silence. The shock left her frozen on the threshold, hands on her hips, unable to react. He had not abandoned her. The thought made its way through her slowly, warm, luminous. A murmur ran through the ranks. Then as one, every soldier raised his sword in a solemn salute. She had never witnessed anything like it. Never had she felt so sheltered, so loved, so precious. And then she understood why Draven had brought so many men with him. It was a declaration. An epic gesture to show her how much she meant to him. How priceless she was. Draven did not speak at first. He remained atop Silas, watching her with a new peace in his eyes, a peace that seemed to topple entire days of anguish. He knew himself to be the luckiest man alive. When he saw the tears sliding down Arielleth's face, he finally said, "I have come for you, Arielleth." The same words as their first meeting. It could not be a coincidence. She stepped forward, brushed her hair back from her shoulders, and boldly planted her hands on her waist. "It was about time, Baron of Wulfsen. I have been waiting an eternity." She thought it would amuse him, but Draven moved too quickly to find out. One instant he was in the saddle, the next, she was already in his arms. He kissed her with fierce urgency, claiming what he believed was his. Arielleth slipped her arms around his neck, surrendering with the same intensity. A wave of desire swept over them both, warm and powerful as a tide that had finally found its way home. And neither of them wished to restrain it. Chapter 72. The blush. A murmur finally broke through the haze that had enveloped Draven, though it took him a moment to react. He pulled his mouth away only briefly, before seeking Arielleth's bruised lips again. She heard the noise as well. And when Draven lifted his head, she discovered that his men were cheering at the top of their lungs. Good heavens, she had completely forgotten where they were. Color rushed to her cheeks, but she forced herself not to make a fuss. Draven, dust-covered, with days of beard and those shadows that hardened his features, did not look troubled in the least. It was hard to read any expression beneath so much roughness. He kissed her again, quick and decisive, as if to make it perfectly clear how little he cared about the witnesses. Arielleth wrapped her arms around his waist, pressed her cheek to his chest and without thinking pinched him with all the strength she could muster. Draven sighed, pleased by that very Arielleth-like display. A discreet clearing of a throat behind her brought her back to reality. She had to introduce Draven to her uncle, if she could recover her voice. And when Draven leaned down to whisper that he loved her, all she could do was burst into tears. He gestured for his men to dismount, and lifted his gaze toward the old man waiting not far away. He still held Arielleth against his side, unwilling to release her even for a moment. "I am the Baron of Wulfsen," he introduced himself. "I certainly hope so," Father Fredrin replied with a smile that ended in a bow interrupted by Draven's firm hand. "I am the one who should bow," said the Baron. "It is an honor to meet you, Father." The priest felt overwhelmed by those words. "She is your greatest treasure, is she not?" he asked, never taking his eyes off Arielleth.
"Yes.
"She is," Draven answered without a trace of doubt. "And I owe you more than I can ever repay. You have protected her all these years, for me." "She is not yours yet," the priest objected.
"Not until I give her to you in marriage."
"A true marriage, Baron. The sooner it is celebrated, the better this old man will sleep." "Then it will be tomorrow at dawn," Draven decreed. Father Fredrin, who had witnessed their passionate kiss, doubted that even dawn would be soon enough. "And you will not sleep with her tonight," he warned sternly. "I have my eye on you, Baron." The silence that followed was a contest of wills. In the end Draven smiled, surprised to finally find someone who did not tremble before him. "Very well. Tonight." Arielleth watched the exchange, embarrassed to know exactly what they were talking about. She blushed again. How mortifying that her own uncle knew she and Draven would share a bed. "I would also wish to marry tonight, but she began before seeing Faramund step forward. "Father, this is the vassal I told you about. Were you the one who put yourself between my niece and Morhollow, when he tried to strike her again?" the priest asked, shaking the soldier's hand.
"Yes, that was me."
"Again?" Draven roared.
"Was she not under the king's protection?" "Nothing happened," Arielleth protested. "He was going to kill her," the priest retorted. "He meant to hurt her," Faramund confirmed. Draven gripped her by the waist, taut as a drawn bow. "It was nothing," she insisted.
"A few slaps." "She still bears the marks," Father Fredrin said gravely. Arielleth shot her uncle a furious look. Could he not see he was stoking Draven's rage? Draven cupped her face and searched for the marks. She shook her head again and again. "He will never touch me again, Draven. That is what matters. Your vassal protected me." Then she turned to her uncle. "Why do you provoke his anger?" "She also has bruises on her shoulders, Baron," the priest persisted. "Uncle." Faramund intervened, shaken. "You told me nothing." "I would have." "Enough," Arielleth cut him off, exasperated. "Father, I know you too well. What are you trying to do now? You were about to tell the Baron that you wished to marry tonight, child, but you did not finish the sentence. The truth, Baron," he continued, "is that she will try to delay it. Is that not so, Arielleth?" "Is that true?" Draven asked, frowning. "Have you changed your mind?" He did not let her answer.
"It does not matter.
You belong to me, Arielleth. That is something you cannot deny." She was startled by the faint tremor she detected in his voice. Draven, her relentless warrior, was also afraid of losing her. His feelings were as vulnerably human as her own. "I love you, Draven," she said, clear and strong. "I know," he replied with that arrogance turned tender. The tension melted from his shoulders. Faramund cleared his throat. "Baron, we need to speak in private. And before that, a good hot meal," the priest added as he went off to prepare supper. "A bath first of all," said Draven, giving Arielleth a pinch before releasing her. He was about to follow the priest, when she stopped him with a sentence that chilled all three men. "Draven, we cannot marry yet." None of them seemed alarmed. That suspicious calm unsettled her. She laced her fingers together, trying to buy time. "If we waited until Ardgar and Asaitha are married, then Morhollow could not." "I knew it," Faramund growled. "You are still determined to carry the whole world on your shoulders." She has always protected those she believed defenseless, the priest conceded. You do not understand, she said, stepping in front of Draven. If we marry now, you will be defying the king's command. And he will hand a scyther over to Morhollow. That is what the message said, Draven. She would have gone on, but his gaze silenced her. She did not know whether he was furious or simply impressed. I only want to ask you one thing, Arielleth. Do you trust me?
Yes.
The answer was enough. He drew her into his arms, kissed her forehead, and stepped back. We will marry tonight. He stopped without turning around, waiting for the only thing that mattered.
Yes, Draven.
Tonight. The right answer. Her uncle laughed in satisfaction. Faramund let out a whistle, and Draven turned back, pleased though not smiling. There was no need. She knew he had never doubted her loyalty. The next hour was a whirlwind. While Draven and Faramund ate and talked, Father Fredrin set out for the house of the Count of Wintermere, too ill to attend the ceremony. Draven would visit him afterward. The Baron and his vassal went down to the lake behind the manor to wash and speak in peace. Arielleth took the chance to ready herself. She pinned up her hair, let it fall again, Draven liked it that way, and dressed in the colors of Wulfsen, cream and deep blue. She had hand-embroidered the collar of the tunic for weeks, tiny cream stitches forming a motif that framed the profile of Draven's wolf. She doubted he would notice. Warriors rarely paid attention to such subtleties. He will think me eccentric, she murmured. Who thinks what? Draven asked from the doorway. She turned with a smile. My wolf. But you look exhausted, Draven. And you, more beautiful with every hour, he whispered. And you more fascinating, she replied, bold. But tell me, why does my future husband wear black to his wedding? It is a somber color, almost mourning. Are you grieving your fate, my lord? He raised an eyebrow, surprised. It is the only clean thing I brought from London, he answered simply. And the only thing that matters is that you will come with me. He stepped forward with unmistakable intent. I intend to kiss you until you forget my clothes. She darted to the other side of the table. You cannot kiss me until we are married, she managed to say.
And why have you not shaved?
After.
Yes, Arielleth.
After. She understood nothing. He followed her, and finally caught her. He was about to cover her mouth, when the door flew open. We are waiting for you, Father Fredrin announced.
But we have a problem. What is it?
Arielleth asked, composing herself. I cannot walk you to the altar, and officiate at the same time. And besides, who will be the witnesses? Could you not escort her to the altar, and then return to? And answer my own question when I ask who gives this woman, the priest protested. Draven laughed aloud. It will be odd, Father Fredrin conceded, but I will survive. And the soldiers will be the witnesses. Faramund at your side, Arielleth. Perfect, the Baron decreed. Go to the improvised altar. You will be married beneath the stars, said the priest. God dwells there.
Then let us be done with it, Draven declared.
Chapter 73. We are united. Arielleth felt a faint pang of pride at the words Draven had chosen. She took his hand, trying to draw his attention. Can we be done with this at last? She insisted, frowning. When he turned toward her, she understood at once that he was doing it on purpose, deliberately provoking her. And when he opened his mouth to reply, the severity had already vanished from his expression. We have been bound since the very first moment I saw you, Arielleth. God knew it, I knew it, and deep down you knew it too. We pledged each other fidelity, and even if Brandulf was not a true priest, even if our union received no blessing, we are still husband and wife. From the moment I warmed your feet, she murmured, repeating what he had said so many times. She looked close to tears. Draven noticed, surprised by the strength of a woman who nonetheless chose not to show weakness before his soldiers. He forced himself to remain calm.
You should thank me, he said gently.
For what reason? She asked, wiping her eyes. Because it was not summer when we met. It took Arielleth a moment to understand. When she finally burst out laughing, that open, warm laughter set his heart alight. So, I must thank the weather for your being conquered, is that what you mean? If it had been summer you would not have needed to warm my feet, he replied, winking at her. She snorted, incredulous. You would have found some other pretext all the same. Draven was about to retort, when Father Fredron began pushing him toward the door. Your men are waiting, Baron. As soon as he left, the priest took Arielleth by the arm, and began instructing her on her duties as a wife. He spoke for a long while, with a tenderness that moved her deeply, and ended by confessing how proud he was to represent his family on that day. Then he offered his arm to the young woman he had baptized, watched grow and loved as a daughter. The ceremony was brief and moving. At its end, Draven presented his wife to the soldiers, who bowed before her and swore her eternal loyalty. Exhausted and eager, Draven left her for a moment to pay a visit to the Count of Wintermere. He returned in less than 20 minutes. Father Fredron was already asleep. His pallet stood against the wall opposite Arielleth's narrow bed, separated by little more than a thin curtain. Draven found his wife sitting on the edge of the mattress, still in her wedding dress. He stripped off his clothes and, lying down on the blankets, pulled her against his chest. He kissed her with longing, and told her softly to prepare to rest. She lingered, restless, glancing again and again toward the shadow where the priest slept. At last her face flushed. She leaned close and whispered that perhaps they should go outside and find a more private place. It was their wedding night, after all, and she feared making noise, losing control, letting emotion betray her. But Draven heard none of it. When she looked at him again, he was already fast asleep. Frustrated, Arielleth curled up beside him on the blankets and closed her eyes, jaw clenched. The next morning, Draven woke with a start at the sound of the priest moving about the room. As he sat up, he nearly stumbled over Arielleth's body, asleep on the floor, wrapped in a thin sheet. Good heavens, he had fallen asleep on his wedding night. He gathered her into his arms, and laid her on the bed. The sun slipping through the window gilded her skin with a soft, almost sacred glow. Desire surged like a gale, and Draven kissed her awake. She opened her eyes with a trembling sigh, answering his caresses with a surrender that utterly disarmed him. They sought each other with an ancient hunger, held back too long, and entwined their bodies with a mix of urgency and tenderness that left them spent, laughing between breaths. When Arielleth suddenly tensed, remembering where they were, Draven soothed her with a murmur. Father Fredron has gone to say Mass. She relaxed at once. Draven sat up, running a hand through his beard. I am going to shave. Arielleth blushed. I would rather you did not. I have grown fond of it, my lord. He kissed her with an intensity that ended any doubt. When Father Fredron returned, he found them dressed and composed, Draven seated at the table, his gaze never leaving his wife as she prepared breakfast. I need a priest, Father, Draven said. Would you accept the care of my soul? I may require your services at once. Arielleth clapped her hands in delight, but the priest shook his head gravely. The Count needs me. I have been at his side too long to abandon him now. Arielleth understood, and nodded with tenderness. Perhaps when he is gone, you could come and live with us, though I doubt you wouldn't end up burying us all. Arielleth, her uncle reproached. She hurried to apologize. Draven, more diplomatic, intervened. Then we shall be the ones to visit you, until you are able to join us. The priest smiled, satisfied. How long will we stay? Arielleth asked. We must leave today. We could stay until the end of summer, she let slip. Today, Draven repeated. She sighed. As you wish. Father Fredron left, leaving them alone. Arielleth stepped closer to her husband. You must allow me to have opinions of my own. I will not always submit to your wishes. Draven smiled faintly. I know that well. You are my wife, and you will reign at my side. But your reasons for staying,
They are irrational, she admitted, sitting on his lap. I am postponing the inevitable. It is time you knew the truth about your wife. I am more cowardly than you think. He laughed, surprised, and when he managed to contain himself, he added, You are braver than all my men together. Who risks her life for her enemy's brother? Who protects a scyther like a sister? Who faces Silas without blinking? It was me, yes, Arielleth murmured, resting her hands on his cheeks. But I was trembling inside. Even being at your side frightened me. Draven kissed her deeply. Courage is not the absence of fear, my love. It is moving forward despite it. She rested her forehead against his chest. Tell me what I must do before the king. I don't want to offend you or make a mistake. He will question me, won't he? He stroked her cheek. You need only tell the truth. That is all I ask. Morhollow said the same, she whispered. He fears my honesty will condemn you. That is my battle. Leave the rest to me. Arielleth sighed, overcome by reason. Now I truly must shave, he insisted. She blushed again. I would rather you didn't. I like the feel of your beard. Draven smiled, leaning down to kiss her with a tenderness that made the room tremble. Chapter 74. Even in the longest night, destiny keeps the path back. Draven and Arielleth reached London after 2 days on the road. At the gates of the royal castle, Garen, Emric and Ardgar were waiting for them, all three wearing somber expressions. After embracing Arielleth, Emric informed Draven that the barons had already convened in the council chamber. Garen was next to greet her. He lingered longer than necessary in the embrace, and when he finally turned to Draven, his hands were still resting on her waist. Will you go see the king tonight? Draven deduced that his brother had not yet overcome that infatuation with Arielleth. He drew her closer to his side before replying. I'm going now. Morhollow believes Arielleth is with her uncle, Ardgar interjected. He is likely learning of her return at this very moment. But it's worth remembering that Morhollow knows your marriage is not official. It is now, Draven replied, leaving no room for doubt. Father Fredrin married us last night. My soldiers were witnesses. Ardgar broke into a genuine smile at the news. The king will fly into a rage, Emric growled. He'll take the wedding as a personal affront before settling this matter. Draven was about to respond, when he saw a group of guards approaching. They were led by the king's brother, who stopped in front of them. Henry made a small gesture for his men to wait, then addressed Draven. My brother has sent his escort to accompany Lady Arielleth to her chambers. I am on my way to see William to deliver my report, Draven answered. And I have no intention of letting Arielleth go anywhere alone. The last time she remained under royal protection, she was treated cruelly. Henry did not react to the harsh tone. I doubt the king even knew she was at court. Morhollow. I will not expose her to danger again, Draven cut in. Then would you rather this lady be caught between your dispute and my brother's? Henry asked. Before Draven could answer, Henry added. Come with me for a moment. There is something I wish to discuss with you. Out of respect for his rank, Draven complied. They moved aside, to a secluded part of the garden. Henry did most of the talking. Arielleth could hear nothing, but the tension on her husband's face was enough to tell her he was not pleased by the exchange. When they returned, Draven turned to her. Arielleth, go with Henry. He will see to you. To your chambers, she asked, trying to keep the unease from her voice. Henry answered for him. You have been assigned quarters of your own, guarded by my men. Until this conflict is resolved, neither Morhollow nor Draven will be allowed near you. My brother has a difficult temper, let us avoid adding fuel to the fire. It is not yet too late. Arielleth looked at Draven. He nodded, and she bowed to Henry. Draven took her by the arm, and whispered something in her ear.
Whatever it was, it lit her face with a radiant smile. Garin watched them walk away.
What did you say to her, Draven?
She was on the verge of tears, and suddenly she looked radiant. I merely reminded her of the ending of a certain story, Draven replied with a slight shrug. He said no more. Emric suggested that Draven freshen up and, if possible, get some rest. Draven agreed to change his tunic, though the idea of sleeping on such a day seemed absurd. I think I'll follow Arielleth, Emric remarked. Perhaps I'll find Faramond on duty, and stay with him until nightfall. Don't make Henry think you distrust his men, Draven warned him. When Emric left, Garin murmured to Ardgar. We've avoided a clash. Draven was ready to demand justice at once. A temporary truce, Ardgar replied.
The real battle begins now.
The barons will summon Draven this afternoon. Henry has intervened, and he deserves recognition. One day Draven will thank him.
Why is he so concerned?
Garin asked. He seeks to secure Draven's support, Ardgar explained. Come, let us drink to my forthcoming marriage to your sister.
Then she accepted.
Yes. I will wed her before she changes her mind. Garin laughed at the remark, and Ardgar returned the smile. He had no intention of confessing the secret meeting he had had with Henry, nor the strange questions about Draven's loyalty. Garin unwittingly might pose the wrong question to the wrong person. The Wulfsen brothers already had troubles enough. After the toast I'll go look for Emric, Garin said. The corridor outside Arielleth's chamber will be quite crowded, Ardgar observed. I wonder what Morhollow will do when he learns she has returned. Morhollow returned from hunting at dusk. The moment he learned that his sister had come back, he flew into a rage and went to demand her. Faramond was standing guard alone. When he saw Morhollow approach, he leaned his back against the wall and looked at him with contempt. Morhollow ignored him, and began pounding on the door demanding that it be opened. It was Henry who answered. He greeted the man courteously, and informed him that no one had permission to speak with Arielleth. Before Morhollow could reply, he shut the door in his face. Arielleth, bewildered, did not know what to make of Henry's behavior. The king's brother had only left her alone for a moment, to allow her to change, before being presented to the monarch. Your brother reddens just as easily as mine, Henry remarked as he slid the bolt into place. He offered her his hand, and guided her toward the window, away from the door. Even the walls can hear, he whispered softly. Arielleth chose to ignore everything she had heard about him, that he was ambitious, manipulative, plain, shorter than Draven, and father to a long line of illegitimate children. With her he was being kind, that was enough. I thank you for what you did today for my husband, she said, when she sensed that Henry was waiting for something.
There is something that has intrigued me since this afternoon, he confessed.
If it is not indiscreet, what did Draven whisper to you? You seemed quite pleased. He reminded me that Odysseus had returned home. She said no more. Henry demanded that she tell him the whole story. It was not a gentle request, but it did not trouble Arielleth. She recounted Odysseus's return, his home overrun by treacherous men, the message sent to Penelope, the cleansing of his house. Draven merely reminded me that he too will set things right, she concluded. Then your husband and I share a temperament, Henry said. This house also needs to be purged. Arielleth frowned. I fear that Draven will provoke the king. You yourself have mentioned his temper. There is another matter I wish to discuss with you, he said, suddenly more grave. Are you my husband's friend? His ally? Henry nodded. Then I will do everything I can to help you, Arielleth promised. You are as loyal as Draven, he said, pleased. If I intercede for you before the king, will you obey what is decreed, even if it means your exile? Arielleth was taken aback. You could save your husband's life, Henry added. I will do whatever is necessary, she whispered. Then you must trust me as you trust him. Arielleth nodded. My husband says you are the cleverest of the three. She stopped short when she realized what she had said, but Henry burst into laughter. He knows my worth, does he? He does, she admitted. I would do anything to save him. Even if the price were my life. So you would offer yourself in his place? Henry asked, his voice turning cordial once more. He smiled, confusing her again. I do not think Draven would ever accept such a sacrifice. It is complicated, Arielleth murmured. Trust me. I will defend your cause, he assured her. She bowed her head and on impulse knelt. I thank you with all my heart for your help. Rise, Arielleth. I am not the king. I wish you were, she whispered, without lifting her gaze. Henry did not answer. He moved toward the door, but before opening it he said, Sometimes wishes come true, Arielleth. In the council chamber, show sympathy for no one. Keep them uncertain until you speak. I will be on your side. Chapter 75. The Mother. Henry left without adding a word. 2 hours passed before he returned to escort her to the audience. Arielleth walked at his side with her back straight, taut as a drawn bowstring. She begged God to keep her face serene, and not to fall apart before seeing Draven. Her life hung on that meeting, her very breath as well. When she entered the great hall beside Henry, she realized they were late. Most had finished dining, and the servants were clearing away the remains. A murmur rippled through the room, every gaze turned toward her. Arielleth answered them with the composure of a queen, though her eyes searched desperately for her husband. Draven found her first. He was leaning against a wall at the far end, flanked by Emmerich and Garin. He watched her advance, serene and radiant, still dressed in her bridal tunic. The memory of the ceremony held him rooted to the spot. She walks like a queen, Garin whispered. And she's terrified, Emmerich added. Draven took a step, ready to go to her, but his brothers blocked his way. She'll come back to you, Emmerich murmured. Let Henry play his part. Morhollow seized a moment when Henry was greeting someone, and lunged at his sister. One step toward Draven and I'll run you through, he hissed. And I'll have your precious priest killed. And Draven, she shot back, restrained yet blazing. And his brothers? And all those who oppose you. His fury betrayed him, he grabbed her arm brutally. Do not provoke me, Arielleth. My power surpasses that of anyone in England. Even the king's? Asked an icy voice behind him. Morhollow spun around, startled. Henry stood facing him, his expression severe. With a firm gesture he knocked Morhollow's hand away from Arielleth's arm. He studied the reddened marks left on her skin. When he looked back at the Baron, his eyes burned with contempt. I must present your sister to some loyal servants, he declared. It was an open challenge. Morhollow stepped back, defeated for the moment. What was he telling you? Henry asked Arielleth as they walked away. That he would kill my uncle Fredrin if I went near Draven. He can do nothing here, not today. And tomorrow will be too late. Believe me, he is finished. Clarion, who had witnessed the scene, hurried over to greet them. He tried to join their walk, but Henry cut him short with an empty smile. Perhaps another time. Clarion stalked off in a fury. Arielleth and Henry made their way toward the garden. Who is that man speaking with Emmerich? She asked. The red-haired one. He seems uneasy. The Baron of Greymarsh, Henry replied. Why does he interest you? He knew my mother. Arielleth watched him, waiting for him to look at her. When their eyes finally met, she offered him a small smile, heavy with gratitude and nostalgia. She longed to speak with him, but that was impossible. According to Clarion, Greymarsh was her true father. The thought burned in her chest, she had kept it from Draven. Is he a friend of my husband? She asked cautiously. Yes. Why? She avoided answering. Henry seemed to read her soul. Morhollow has withdrawn. He will try to sway the king. Go to the terrace. I will send Draven. She did not have to wait long. Draven crossed the terrace with a determined stride, and drew her against his chest. "This will be over soon," he promised, kissing her with a tenderness that undid her. "Trust me, my light." "And you must trust me," she whispered. "Do you trust me, Draven?"
"Yes," he answered without hesitation.
She shook her head slowly. "I cannot enter at your side. Henry wants Morhollow to believe he still holds me in his grasp until the last moment. Do not be troubled. It will be over soon. And I must tell you something I forgot, in the midst of everything. Arielleth." She drew a deep breath. "I am illegitimate, Draven. A bastard. What do you think of that?" He blinked, taken aback. "Does it matter to you?" she asked with disarming frankness. "It eases me. I share no blood with Morhollow." "Who called you a bastard?" Draven's voice was gentle, but heavy with anger. "No one. I overheard Morhollow and Clarion arguing. My mother was already expecting me when she married. Now I know." Draven looked at her for a long moment, until his eyes softened. "You are the only woman who could celebrate such news," he said, and laughed softly. The sound warmed her heart. "He will tell no one," she whispered. "He freed me without knowing it. Does it trouble you?" "How can you even ask?" "Because I love you," she replied with sweet drama. "And even if you are angry, you will have to love me always. You promised."
"Forever," he confirmed.
Trumpets rang out. "Do you know who your father is?" Draven asked when he saw a trace of fear cross her face. "Greymarsh," she replied almost proudly. He smiled. "He is a good man." Henry appeared then, relentless. "It is time. Arielleth, come. The king awaits you." Draven felt her tremble. He squeezed her arm before letting her go. When she was already at the door, he called after her. "Greymarsh has red hair, wife. Red as fire." She did not turn. "Mine is more chestnut." "You must have noticed," she replied with a laugh that undid him. And Draven knew with absolute certainty that everything would turn out well. Chapter 76. A crime committed. When William II entered, a reverent silence fell over the court. The monarch advanced to the raised throne upon the dais, and when he finally took his seat, everyone bowed their heads. Serenity left Arielleth's eyes. She stood at the center of the hall, alone in that sea of expectation. Henry had stepped away from her, to approach the throne and whisper something in the king's ear. Whatever it was, it did not please His Majesty. William shook his head, irritated, and dismissed his brother with a brusque gesture. A rejection, plain and simple. Arielleth closed her eyes for a moment, summoning the courage that had sustained her so many times. Henry had explained that Morhollow would speak first, Draven after, and she at the end. When she opened them again, she found her husband at the far end of the hall, approaching without haste, his gaze fixed on her. They said nothing, yet in that silent exchange she felt him trying to lend her his strength. Then she straightened, rose slightly onto the tips of her toes, and in full view of everyone sent him a kiss. Heavens above, how she loved him! Draven seemed calm, almost assured, even when the guards raised their voices to announce his name. He gave her a conspiratorial wink. "Stay here until you are called," he murmured, brushing her cheek with a caress before turning toward the king. But Arielleth did not obey. She took a step after him, though she had barely advanced a hand's breadth before Emmerich, Garin, Ardgar, and several unfamiliar barons surrounded her, blocking her way. The crowd parted to let Morhollow and Draven pass, positioning them before the king some 10 paces apart. William raised his voice, addressing the court. He lamented the conflict between the two lords, expressed his anger over the lives lost, and confessed his confusion at the many contradictory accounts he had heard. He ended by demanding the truth, and gestured for Morhollow to begin. Morhollow did not waste a second. He declared himself innocent, accused Draven of treason, of razing his stronghold, of killing 200 loyal soldiers, and of abducting and nearly destroying his sister. He then added that Draven blamed him for a crime allegedly committed against a scyther. He feigned bewilderment, assuring the court he would never have imagined reprisals from the Baron of Wulfsen. How could he? He had been at court when the attack occurred, and he had witnesses to support him. He concluded by asserting that Draven had no proof, while he himself had plenty to accuse him with. He was as slippery as an eel, and lied with the ease of a seasoned courtier. And he was not finished yet. He asked permission to present 3 witnesses. The king granted it, with a slight gesture. One after another, the men paraded before William, reciting their falsehoods as though they had rehearsed for days. Arielleth knew none of them, but she knew well what to call the 3, Judas. When the last took his place behind Morhollow, Arielleth twisted the edge of Emmeric's tunic. He turned, freed the fabric and took her hand. Garin did the same with the other. They tried to steady her, though their eyes betrayed anger and concern. Morhollow stepped forward, made an exaggerated bow, and added another dose of venom to his speech before imploring justice. Then it was Draven's turn. The king called him by name, a detail that did not go unnoticed. Draven spoke without ornament, without theatrics. He laid out the facts as they were. He denounced Morhollow for abusing a scyther, for attempting to murder him, and stated that he had sought only vengeance. He did not ask for justice. He demanded it. "Do you have witnesses?" William asked. "I have spoken the truth," Draven replied. "I need no witnesses to vouch for my honor." Garin murmured, "He's trapped between 2 fires." Emric nodded. The king was inclined to favor Draven, but Morhollow had tipped the balance by presenting false witnesses. Draven was a loyal vassal, but also a formidable warrior. To wound his honor could cost the realm dearly. For him, asking for witnesses was an insult. His entire life was testimony enough. The analysis fell away when the king spoke Arielleth's name. She stepped forward with dignity, back straight, face serene, and bowed before the monarch. "My brother maintains that I will spare you from testifying," William declared, "for you have suffered enough." Arielleth looked at him in surprise. At last she understood Morhollow's confidence throughout the evening. He had maneuvered to silence her. "Your Majesty," she said with reverent calm, "I am your humble servant. I have no armies to offer you, but I would give you all that I possess. I beg you to allow me to answer your questions." The king regarded her with renewed interest. "You do not seem as shaken as your brother claims. Do you wish me to clear the hall?" "I would prefer not to, Your Majesty." "Then help me untangle this snare." Arielleth laced her fingers, drew a deep breath and began. The court stood motionless. "I would like to begin with the night my brother's fortress was attacked." William nodded. With gentle words, even kind ones, he urged her to continue. She recounted how Draven arrived under a banner of truce, and how Morhollow received him, only to betray him. She explained the plan, to let him freeze to death naked and bound to a post, then carry his body away and pretend he had died at the hands of winter or beasts. Morhollow let out a growl and took a step toward her, but stopped when he saw Draven rest his hand on the hilt of his sword. "She doesn't know what she's saying," Morhollow blurted. "Free her from this torment." The king silenced him with an imperious gesture. Arielleth went on, how she herself freed Draven, how the Baron's men scaled the walls because it was their duty to save him, how the battle erupted. "Were you taken prisoner?" the king asked. "I was freed from my brother's mistreatment," she replied in a steady voice. "Morhollow took pleasure in harming me. I was weary of his abuses." The court murmured, astonished. "The Baron of Wulfsen took me with him," she continued. "I never feared that he would hurt me. Never." William studied Morhollow with a stony expression. Then, without taking his eyes off him, he asked, "Who burned the fortress?" Arielleth answered. "Morhollow destroyed his own house when he broke the truce." A heavy sigh left the king's chest. "Then I suppose your virtue remains intact." "He did not touch me," she replied with a strangled cry. Chapter 77. A collective sigh. A dense murmur rippled through the crowd, like a breath held too long. All seemed spellbound by the story unfolding before the king. Up to that moment, Arielleth had not spoken a single lie. "Draven did not touch me," she said. "But I have sworn to tell the whole truth. And so I must add, that I was the one who took advantage of the situation. In the end, I was the one who seduced him." The murmur turned into a collective sigh. Arielleth thought she heard a resigned groan from Draven. The king's eyes widened, ready to roar, but Draven was already at her side, covering her mouth with his hand. She understood his plea, "Be silent now for all the saints." When Arielleth nodded, he withdrew his hand and set it on her shoulder, firm and protective. "Are you aware that you are tarnishing your own reputation, my lady?" the king asked. "I love Draven," she replied without hesitation. "And I did not seduce him, until we were already husband and wife." The king shot a scorching look at Morhollow.
"The charge that your sister has been dishonored is annulled.
One need only look at her to know she speaks the truth." Then he turned back to Arielleth. "And what of what your husband claims? That Morhollow allowed his sister to be violated?" "It is true. A scyther told me what happened. Rendgar was the one who attacked her, but Morhollow was there. It was part of the plan. He is guilty as well." "I see," the king growled, fury pulsing beneath every word. He questioned her at length, and Arielleth answered with the same calm she had shown from the first moment. "My husband acted with honor. My brother with deceit," she concluded before sagging gently against Draven. "Nothing further to add?" the king asked Morhollow. He could scarcely form words, his face was the perfect portrait of rage. "My sister lies," he managed to stammer. "The same sister you have just claimed always tells the truth." William thundered. Morhollow fell silent. The king turned to Arielleth once more. "You are loyal to your husband. An admirable virtue. Tell me, are you speaking the truth, or are you trying to protect Draven?" Before she could answer, the king placed his keen gaze between them. "Draven, do you wish to add anything?" "Only that the seduction was mutual," he replied lightly. "And extraordinarily pleasurable." A wave of laughter and applause shook the hall. Even the king smiled. He rose to pronounce judgment. "Morhollow, you have betrayed my trust. You are stripped of all rank and banished from this court." Then he looked to Draven. "My brother Henry advises that I grant you time for the fire of your anger to cool. I regret the chaos and the lives lost, but I understand your thirst for justice for your sister's honor. A month with the Scots will suffice to temper your spirit." Arielleth felt Draven tense. She took his hand, pleading with her fingers that he not rebel. "Upon your return," the king continued, "if you still wish to challenge Morhollow, I will grant you a duel to the death. The manner of it you may choose." Draven remained silent, furious at the thought of waiting an entire month. But Arielleth trembled, and that tremor sealed his decision. "I will depart at once." The king nodded. "I have deposed Morhollow. He will have a month to hide from you," he said with bitter irony. "I will find him," Draven promised. A grim smile crossed the king's face. "Of that I have no doubt." Draven bowed, and William left the hall with Morhollow hard on his heels. "I would like a word with you, my wife," Draven sighed. Arielleth tried to smile at him. His face was an unreadable mask. She could not tell whether he was angry or merely exhausted. "I am worn out, Draven. And you promised the king we would leave at once." "We? You are not planning to leave me here, are you?" she asked, unable to hide her fear. "Never." "Then do not provoke me," she grumbled. "I have endured an ordeal." The Baron of Greymarsh approached, interrupting their tense exchange. "Your wife matches you in courage, Baron Wulfsen." She faced the king without her voice trembling. "And what conclusion have you drawn?" Draven asked calmly. Greymarsh smiled. "That I still do not understand who burned what, who attacked whom. I have no idea what truly happened." You have just described my life with Arielleth, Draven declared with feigned resignation. She noticed the way Draven watched her as he looked at the Baron. I forgot to introduce you, he said. Baron, this is my wife, Arielleth. I believe you once knew her mother. Greymarsh nodded. She greatly resembles Russeline, he said gently. It is an honor to meet you, Baroness. A knot of emotion tightened in Arielleth's chest, but she managed to smile. I would like to speak with you about my mother. Perhaps when we return from this forced exile, you would accept an invitation to visit us. It would be an honor, he replied. There was no time for more. Draven's allies surrounded him to offer congratulations. Arielleth remained at his side, clinging to his hand, eager to know what he truly thought. Draven ignored her and turned to Garin. Saddle the horses. We leave in an hour. Draven. Do I have time to go up and fetch my things? Arielleth asked. You will take what you can carry, wife. She sighed. Then are you angry with me? Draven looked at her. His eyes were clouded, and he bit his lip with unease. Angry, he repeated, with a trace of amusement. You told the king you seduced me. When you choose to lie, you do so without the slightest shyness. It was not a lie, she replied. I wanted you to kiss me, and it annoyed me when you stopped. That is seduction too, is it not? I kissed you that first night and you only responded. So yes, I seduced you. If you had told the truth, I would now be fighting Morhollow to the death. Oh, I know perfectly well how all that works, she retorted, exasperated. You would say one thing, he would contradict it, and the king would throw you both into a lake bound hand and foot. If you sank, you were innocent. Dead but innocent. And I refuse to sleep every night, accompanied only by your honor. I want you alive. What do you say to that, husband? Tears began to slide down her cheeks despite her efforts. Draven stared at her in surprise. Arielleth, he whispered, with a tenderness that undid her, warriors are not judged that way. That is the church's business, not the king's. Oh, she murmured, a little embarrassed. Draven almost laughed. He drew her into his arms, feeling her mumble against his chest. I have endured an ordeal, she repeated. You have a heart of gold, he said, stroking her hair. Come, wife. I need you to seduce me. And Arielleth did not disagree in the least. Chapter 78. Clean dreams. They made camp nearly 4 hours after setting out. Arielleth walked on, exhausted, still carrying in her mind the sharp echo of the insults Clarion had hurled at them just before the journey began. Draven led her to a nearby stream so she could wash. Though he stepped away to organize the camp, he never stopped watching her. As long as Morhollow lived, Draven would not leave her side. Arielleth cleaned herself as best she could under the circumstances and returned. Draven had finished raising his tent, set a short distance from the rest of the company. Do you think Father Fredrin is safe? She asked. Or should we strengthen the guard? There will be no trouble, Draven replied. I left my best men with him. Do not fear, my love. She nodded, a hint of relief softening her features. Do you remember the first night we slept together? I remember it well. The fire was so close I thought the tent would burn. You worry about everything, Draven said, untying the cord that served as her belt. That night you slept fully dressed. I was protecting my virtue, Arielleth smiled. Without knowing that, in truth, I already wanted to seduce you. Draven let out an amused growl. Arielleth settled onto the furs. The night was gentle, brushed by a cool breeze, the moon high and full bathed them in silvery light. Undress, Arielleth, Draven ordered, already free of his tunic and boots. She hesitated, uneasy at the nearness of the soldiers. She drew him close and whispered in his ear. We cannot. They would see us. Draven slowly shook his head. No one can see us, my wife, he murmured. I want you. Now. He explained the rest without words, kissing her with an intensity that stole her breath. Arielleth sighed against his lips, winding her arms around his neck. Her surrender was instinctive, pure. When he made her shiver by kissing the skin of her neck, she gasped. The rest became a whirlwind of urgent caresses, of touches seeking comfort and forgetting. Desire unspoken yet unmistakable, deep. Human. There were no words, only broken breaths, hands seeking skin, a necessary reunion after the torment of that day. When at last they lay still, bound in a warm silence, Draven rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, my wife," he murmured. "And I love you, Draven," Arielleth replied, curling against him. After a moment, she spoke again. "Did I shame you today at court, saying that I had seduced you?" Draven smiled into her hair, and she felt the motion against her brow. "I do not feel shame," he said with measured arrogance. "Women feel shame." Arielleth laughed softly. "And warriors? They grow tired," he answered. "They are exhausted after making love to their wives." "Are you telling me to sleep?" "Exactly." "I will obey, but first, one more question," she insisted, ignoring Draven's resigned sigh. "Who were those men who lied to help my brother? Were they barons?" "No," Draven replied. "Just men willing to support Morhollow and testify for him. They did not even have an army." He hesitated a moment. "No. But there are always those who will lie for a generous reward. Morhollow no longer has enough gold to buy loyalty. He will not be a danger again." Arielleth relaxed at his words. "Draven, when we go to Scotland you will meet my cousin Merowyn. I planned to live with her before I met you." "And you will meet my sister Marielleth," he murmured drowsily. "Is she married to a Scot?" Arielleth asked, surprised. "Yes." "And does her husband have?" No, he is not red-haired," Draven interrupted. "That is not what I was asking," she protested, amused. "I wanted to know whether they knew Merowyn." But his deep breathing left no doubt. Draven had fallen asleep. When he began to snore softly, Arielleth smiled and pressed closer to him. That night she dreamed bright dreams. Clean dreams. Dreams of the just. As with Orpheus and Eurydice, a love that descends into darkness. To look back can destroy everything, but it can also be the only honest act of a heart that fears losing what it loves. The condition of not looking back turns the act into a test of faith. But it also reveals a human truth: no one can love without doubt. Orpheus did not fail through disobedience, but because to love is to want to see with one's eyes, not only with hope. Eurydice walks behind him, silent. Is she still there? Has she vanished? The absence of certainty is more torturous than death itself. The silence behind him weighed more heavily than all the shadows of Hades. And what if this time it were Eurydice who descends, who risks everything to bring her beloved back? It was also like Andromeda. Andromeda waited in chains, but her spirit was never captive. Perseus saw her, yes. But it was she who turned rescue into alliance, fear into horizon, darkness into beginning. Because no chain can withstand the heartbeat of one who chooses to live. And like Ariadne did not enter the labyrinth, but she knew it. She knew how a monster breathes, how its corridors creak, how a brave man falters when the echo of his own fear throws his name back at him. She did not kill it with swords, she defeated it with clarity. Such are some women, they do not carry steel but they hold the thread that saves. And Andromeda was chained because of others. Not by a monster, but by the vanity of the world. All of us are at some point chained in this way. As in the myth of Ulysses and Penelope, Draven is the one who returns, Arielleth the one who waits, but she is also intelligence standing against chaos. Chapter 79. Penelope's fidelity is a beacon, even for the wolves of the world. The following month was a haven of calm for Draven, and a growing joy for Arielleth. The young woman was captivated by the Scots, Those austere loyal warriors reminded her of the old Spartans, though none, naturally, could compare to her husband. Yet they treated Draven as one of their own. Arielleth, his sister, welcomed them with an open heart. She was a beautiful woman, deeply in love with her husband. Arielleth never managed to visit her cousin Merwen, who lived far away in the highlands. Arielleth promised to send her greetings in her name. Thus passed an entire month among Draven's family, and he, true to his word, began teaching her the arts of defense. He was patient, until it came time for the bow. Then he lost it completely. Faramond had already warned him. Arielleth always missed slightly above the target, as if the air itself mischievously diverted her arrows. They returned to Wulfsen Castle at the end of August. There they learned of King William II's death. The accounts were confusing, but all agreed he had fallen during a hunt. A soldier had shot at the stag and by misfortune the arrow struck the king's neck. There was also a darker version, and paradoxically, the one most accepted by the church. A witness claimed the arrow had been diverted in mid-flight by the red hand of the devil himself. Satan, the clergy declared, has claimed the young monarch. Henry claimed the crown without delay. Arielleth was glad to have left the court before the tragedy. Draven, on the other hand, was deeply irritated. He was convinced that had he remained there, he would have saved the king's life. No one believed the demonic tale, but neither did they dare openly blame Henry. Still, Arielleth remembered well that he had been the one to suggest sending Draven to Scotland. Perhaps she suspected he had wanted to keep him away from London and safe. But she kept her suspicion to herself. October brought Ardgar and Ositha's wedding, and the return of Father Fredron. The Count of Wintermere had died, just 5 days after Arielleth's wedding. By then Draven had already deployed his men across England. Morhollow was now an outlaw, and Henry made no effort to conceal his disdain for him. Arielleth believed her brother had fled the kingdom. Draven never contradicted her, though he was certain Morhollow waited in the shadows, hungry for revenge. The royal summons arrived soon after. The new king demanded Draven come to court to swear allegiance. He could not refuse, but the idea of leaving Arielleth alone, even for a few days, was unbearable. He was sitting in the main hall, rereading the message, when she came down for breakfast. She looked rested, though he knew she needed more and more sleep. Arielleth had been waking with nausea for weeks. Draven watched everything in silence, waiting for her to understand the obvious herself. Arielleth, she smiled at him by the fire. Draven, I must tell you something. She sighed. It's nearly midday and I've barely left the bed. I think I'm ill. I didn't want to worry you. I asked Morwenna for a potion last night. And did she give it to you? He asked, striving not to laugh. No. Arielleth brushed her hair aside, accidentally hitting his chest. She just smiled and left. What should I think? Draven exhaled. It was time. Would it bother you much if our child had red hair? Arielleth's eyes opened wide as moons. She brought a hand to her belly. The girl will have brown hair, she said in a trembling voice, like her mother. And I will be the best of mothers, Draven. He laughed and kissed her. You've infected me with your arrogance, wife. You will give me a boy. And that ends the discussion. Arielleth nodded as if accepting it, already imagining the face of a radiant little girl in her mind. Joy overflowed her. You shall not return to the forest to feed that wild animal, Draven said sternly. I don't want you leaving the walls. It's my wolf, she replied defiant, though she already suspected it was not a wolf but a wild dog. Today will be the last time, he promised. Today marks 1 year since I arrived here. You may come with me and Faramond. Draven finally relented. But the afternoon fell, and he still had duties to finish. Arielleth gathered her arrows, placed them in the quiver, and slung her bag over her shoulder. Faramond carried the food. She carried her bow, boasting that she might catch a rabbit for dinner. Faramond considered it impossible. At the top of the hill, Arielleth emptied the food onto the grass, crowning the offering with a large juicy bone. It was her farewell. Faramund was the first to hear the crunch among the trees. He turned, and an arrow pierced his back. He fell to his knees as another archer drew the string. The alarm rang out from the tower. The soldiers took their positions on the walls. Draven, who had just mounted to join them, spurred his horse at the sound of the shouts. His roar of fury echoed through the castle. A score of men emerged from the forest, forming a semicircle. The archers on the walls were too far. Arielleth understood in a heartbeat. There was no escape. She knocked an arrow, drew the bow, and took aim. She recognized the nearest man, one of Morhollow's false witnesses. And where he was, Morhollow could not be far. Rage held her steady. She fired. The man fell before she could notch another arrow. Draven circled the hill with his soldiers, closing a tight trap. The fight erupted below, fierce and furious. Arielleth dropped the bow, and turned toward Faramund, who was trying to reach her. But a clawing hand grabbed her from behind. She spun and screamed. Morhollow! His eyes burned with madness. She stomped on his foot, drove a brutal knee into him just as Draven had taught her, and he fell, dragging her down with him. He tried to strike her, his fist shattered against her jaw. Arielleth lost consciousness. When Morhollow saw her lying still, he groped for his dagger among the grass. He knew Draven would arrive in seconds. He had to kill her first. He found the weapon among the remnants of the food. He laughed, a harsh rasping sound. And then came the growl. A deep ancient thunder. Arielleth opened her eyes just in time to see a tawny flash leap at Morhollow. The animal tore his throat out in a single motion. Draven reached the top, aiming his bow, but the beast stood over the corpse, fangs bared. He stepped forward, fearing the animal might turn on Arielleth. But the wolf or wild dog smelled the air, decided she was no threat, and returned to the pile of food. It grabbed the bone and disappeared down the hill. Draven dropped the bow and ran to his wife. Arielleth touched her jaw, aching, and then understood. Are they gone? She whispered. Morhollow is dead. She closed her eyes and murmured a brief prayer for a soul she knew hardly deserved it. Faramund, she insisted. His wound, Draven. We must. He was still trembling. Arielleth spoke without pause, giving him time to catch his breath. When he finally loosened the embrace, she smiled at him. Is it over? It is over. He swallowed. Your wolf has saved your life. I know, love. You will always keep me safe. You don't understand. Draven hesitated. Morhollow died by the wolf's hand. Arielleth shook her head. Her husband got strange when he was afraid, and she thought he was trying to make her laugh. Faramund arrived, limping uphill. Baroness, he panted. You've struck him in the heart with an arrow. Was it one of yours? Draven asked, incredulous. Yes, sir. They both stared at her in astonishment. Arielleth hesitated a moment, and confessed. I was aiming for the leg. Faramund and Draven burst out laughing, and Draven lifted her in his arms, beginning the descent toward the castle. You will not feed the wolf again, he said gently. I will take care of it. That animal has earned rest and plenty. Are you still mocking me? She protested, indignant. I've gone through a trial. Draven smiled. What an adorable tyrant she was. He brushed the crown of her head with his chin, as she listed her future bruises. He longed to return home with her, with the same urgency that Ulysses sailed toward Ithaca. Arielleth called the animal my wolf, but Draven was no mythical beast. Just a man with virtues and scars. And yet, he had achieved the impossible. To capture an angel. An angel who was now his. Epilogue, April 1105. Love that endures time is more powerful than any war. Spring had come early to Wulfsen that year. The meadows looked freshly painted, and the waters of the river Avon carried glimmers of light as if they were silver scales. It had been 5 years since William II had died in the strange hunt that shook England, and since then his brother Henry had reigned, now called Henry I, a monarch with a calculating gaze and a steady hand. In the north the Scottish clans remained calm, a watchful calm, and the borders were at peace after decades of tension. Yet the men of Draven of Wulfsen were still spoken of in taverns as if they were iron shadows, disciplined, relentless, loyal to the end. Peace, it was said, endured largely because no one wished to test their patience. Even so, the castle lived a tranquil morning. Draven walked along the corridor with a stride that pretended to be serene, and was not. Every few seconds, he cast a glance toward the closed door of the main chamber, as if the force of his eyes might open it. From within came women's voices, brisk instructions, and the unmistakable hurried rhythm of childbirth. "Father, how long do heroes take to return from a battle?" a small voice asked. Draven lowered his gaze. At his side stood Bran, his 4-year-old son, solemn as a tiny knight, with a rebellious lock of hair that never obeyed the comb. The boy held a small wooden shield, painted by Arielleth with a white wolf on a blue field. Draven cleared his throat. "Today's battle is different," he replied, resting a hand on the boy's hair. "But your mother will return victorious as always." Bran nodded, with that gravity only children possess when they are trying to be grown. "Will you tell me the story again?" he asked, and sat on the bench in the corridor, swinging his legs. It was the third time that morning, but Draven did not know how to refuse him anything. "Very well," he said, sitting beside him. "But only until we hear the midwife." Bran straightened his back. "The story of the wolf." Draven drew a deep breath. The tale already belonged to the child, though he told it with half the feet softened so as not to give him nightmares. "Many years ago," he began, "a warrior named Ulysses lost his way in a dark forest. And when he thought he was about to die, he found a creature as large as a mountain, with eyes of fire." Bran opened his eyes wide, attentive. "Was it a monster, father?" "No," Draven smiled. "It was a guardian. A wolf who protected only what it loved. And when the time came, the wolf ran faster than fear and saved a precious life." The boy frowned, thoughtful. "Like the wolf who saved Mama," he said with the naturalness of someone who knows that legends are only beautiful versions of the truth. Draven felt his heart tighten. Bran was too young to understand what had happened that day on the hill, but he recognized his father's silence as well. "Yes," Draven murmured. "Like that one." A woman's laugh burst from inside. The midwife shouted an order, then another. Draven rose at once. "Father! Stay here, Bran." But Bran followed him without hesitation, like a shadow. Together they stood before the door, just as a sharp cry broke the air. A new cry. A cry that always inevitably stopped the world. The door opened. The midwife, her hair damp and her arms akimbo, smiled like a woman who has just witnessed an everyday miracle. "My lord," she said, "you may enter." Draven moved forward with Bran clinging to his cloak. Arielleth was reclining among cushions, pale yet radiant, and in her arms she held a small bundle wrapped in linen. The baby girl had a soft lock of hair the color of wheat in the sun, and the serene expression of one who enters the world without haste. "Your sister," Arielleth whispered to Bran. "She wants to meet you." Bran, very serious, bowed as if greeting a tiny queen. Draven knelt beside the bed. Arielleth took his hand, squeezing it with surprising strength. "It was long," she admitted, with a weary smile. "But we're well." "Yes," he murmured, unable to take his eyes off the child. "Perfectly well." Bran sat on the edge of the mattress, proud. "Father says wolves protect what they love," he announced, looking at his sister. "I'll protect you too." Arielleth laughed softly. "Did you hear that, little one? You already have your first night." The spring wind slipped in through the window, bringing the scent of damp fields and the hum of bees. Outside the world remained vast, unpredictable, sometimes cruel, but there in that room bathed in golden light, life seemed simple and eternal. Draven wrapped his arms around Arielleth and the children, as if he wished to enclose the moment within himself forever. Peace was fragile, he knew it well. The history of England would continue, with wars and uncertain alliances. But his home was here. And for the first time in many years, Draven of Wulfsen felt that he did not have to defend the entire world. He only had to defend his pack. The end. Author's note: there are stories that are born on the border between two worlds. This one emerged in the winter of the year 1100, when echoes of myths still resounded across Europe, myths that did not belong entirely to anyone, neither to the old peoples of the north, nor to the young Christianity advancing from the cloisters, nor to the classical voices slowly returning through books. Arielleth grew up on that threshold. Educated by a priest who loved Homer as much as the Gospels, she learned to name the world with inherited words: Greek heroes, odysseys, oaths, destinies. The Gaelic myths, older and darker, remained as shadows between the pages. But they did not vanish. They waited to mingle with the new stories, as always happens when one culture breathes within another. Draven, by contrast, belongs to the realm of the wolf, that animal that is both man and symbol, guardian and threat, a figure standing at the border between instinct and honor. His story is not born from a poem, but from the earth and the cold. And yet it ends up in dialogue with the myths she carries within her, because there are truths that repeat themselves in every language: loyalty, fear, loss, the possibility of beginning again. While writing this novel, I thought about how myths change when people change. In ancient Greece, the Furies gave way to reason. Heroes began to answer to justice rather than vengeance. Andromeda was saved, Eurydice almost returned from death, Penelope held together a home the sea had unraveled. In those stories, women ceased to be merely tragic figures and became presence, strength, a moral compass. I wanted Arielleth to inherit part of that legacy, not the goddess who descends into the underworld, nor the muse who waits, but the woman who acts, who rescues, who sees in the man marked by war something more than his ferocity. And I wanted Draven to carry the other gaze, that of the hero who does not know he is a hero, that of the man who fears looking back like Orpheus because he fears losing what he loves, yet who walks toward the light all the same. This novel does not seek to reconstruct the past, it seeks to show how stories travel, mingle, and transform. How a Greek myth can survive in a Norman castle, how a wolf can speak the language of an Odyssey, how a woman can unite two worlds with a simple gesture, extending her hand toward the one everyone else has already given up on. Because in the end, beyond war, faith, and winter, this is a story about what a human heart can save. With gratitude, Ida Marie Overgaard.